Welcome, weary wanderer of the night, to a place where curiosity meets comfort, where the mysteries of science unfold like a gentle lullaby for your restless mind. You've found your way to the Sleepy Scientist, a sanctuary where knowledge flows, as softly as moonlight through curtains, designed for those moments when sleep feels distant but wonder still calls to you. Tonight, we're embarking on an extraordinary journey into one of your body's most remarkable gifts, the intricate, beautiful world of hearing. That invisible bridge between your inner self and the symphony of existence that surrounds you every moment of every day. Together, we'll drift through the elegant mechanics of how a simple vibration in the air becomes the voice of someone you love, how your ears work as both engineers and artists, transforming the chaos of sound into meaning, memory, and emotion. As we explore this marvel that you carry with you always, let the gentle rhythm of discovery guide you toward the peaceful rest that awaits, knowing that even in sleep, your amazing body continues its quiet work of connecting you to the world. Through the gift of sound, close your eyes for a moment and imagine the world around you as an ocean of invisible energy, waves upon waves of movement dancing through the air, touching everything and everyone in their path, yet remaining completely unseen to your eyes. These are the sound waves, the messengers of our universe, born from the simple act of vibration, a guitar string trembling after being plucked, vocal cords fluttering as someone whispers your name, or the gentle rustle of leaves surrendering to an evening breeze. Each vibration sends ripples through the air like stones dropped into still water, carrying with them the essence of their source on a magical journey that can travel across rooms, through walls, and directly into the chambers of your heart. What transforms these traveling vibrations into the rich tapestry of your auditory world is something far more mysterious than mere physics. It's the difference between sound and noise, between the meaningful and the meaningless, where your brain becomes both judge and artist, deciding which waves deserve to become the laughter of a child, the comfort of a familiar voice, or the background hum that fades into the peaceful silence of your dreams. In this invisible realm where every moment pulses with potential music, you're not just a passive receiver but an active participant in the eternal dance between vibration and consciousness, where the simple act of listening becomes a bridge between the physical world and the depths of your soul. Think of each sound wave as having its own unique fingerprint, its own personality written in the language of physics, where frequency becomes the wave's heartbeat, how fast it pulses through space, determining whether you hear the deep, comforting rumble of distant thunder or the delicate chime of wind through crystal. The amplitude is the wave's strength, its emotional intensity, the difference between a whispered secret and a joyful shout, painting the volume of your world in strokes both gentle and bold. Wavelength stretches between these pulses like the space between breaths, long and languid for those bass notes that seem to emanate from the earth itself, short and quick for the crystalline highs that dance at the edge of your perception. But these waves are not content to live only in air. They are adventurous travelers, moving through water with grace, racing through solid walls with determination, each material offering a different highway for their journey, some welcoming them with open arms while others slow their passage like walking through honey. The speed of sound itself becomes a fundamental constant in this invisible symphony, racing at roughly 343 meters per second through the air around you, fast enough that the crack of thunder always arrives before you see its lightning parent, yet slow enough that in large spaces you can actually witness the beautiful delay between action and sound. A reminder that even in our connected world, every voice, every note, every whisper must travel through space and time to reach your waiting ears, that, as you move through your day, you're swimming in two distinct oceans of sound, the ancient, primal voices of the natural world that have serenaded life on Earth for millions of years, and the newer human-crafted symphony of our modern existence, each telling its own story about where we've been and where we're going. The wind through trees carries the same gentle whisper that once comforted our ancestors, while the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the distant call of birds create a timeless soundtrack that connects you to every human who has ever paused to listen to the world's original music. Yet layered over this natural foundation is the complex tapestry of our technological age, the hum of air conditioning that has become the white noise of comfort, the ping of notifications that punctuate our digital conversations, the rumble of traffic that flows like a mechanical river through our cities. What's truly remarkable is that while you're experiencing this rich soundscape through your human ears, tuned to catch the subtleties of speech and the emotional nuances of music. The world around you is alive with creatures hearing the same sounds in completely different ways. Bats navigating by echolocation in frequencies you can't even imagine. Elephants communicating through infrasonic rumbles that travel for miles beneath your awareness. And dogs picking up the high-pitched whistle of sounds that exist in a realm beyond your perception. In this shared yet uniquely personal auditory world, every creature is both audience and performer in a grand concert, where the same vibrations create entirely different experiences, reminding us that hearing is not just about sound waves reaching our ears, but about the beautiful, mysterious way each living being interprets the music of existence. Look in the mirror and marvel at the elegant curves of your outer ear, that wonderfully sculptured piece of cartilage that sits like a personal satellite dish on the side of your head, perfectly designed by millions of years of evolution to capture the invisible waves dancing around you every moment of your life. Your pinna, as scientists lovingly call this outer ear, is far more than just decoration. It's a masterpiece of biological engineering, with each fold and ridge working together to gather sound waves from the world and funnel them toward the precious depths of your hearing system, while its unique shape helps your brain determine whether that voice calling your name is coming from in front of you, behind you, or somewhere in the beautiful three-dimensional space that surrounds your daily existence. From this remarkable collector, sound waves begin their journey down the ear canal, a warm, protective tunnel that serves as both pathway and guardian, lined with tiny hairs and blessed with the golden protection of earwax that keeps dust and unwanted visitors from disturbing the delicate machinery waiting deeper inside. The shape of your ear is as unique as your fingerprint, and this personal acoustic signature means that no two people hear the world in exactly the same way. The subtle differences in how your ear curves and folds create your own individual sonic fingerprint, explaining why the same song can touch your heart differently than it touches someone else's, why your mother's voice sounds like home in a way that's yours alone, and why even in a crowded room, your ears can perform the miracle of picking out the one conversation that matters most to you in that moment. Deep within the labyrinthine corridors of your skull, beyond the familiar landscape of your outer ear, lies one of nature's most exquisite engineering marvels, a space no larger than a sugar cube that houses the most sophisticated mechanical system ever devised, where sound transforms from mere vibration into the language of your soul. This is your middle ear, a hidden chamber that exists in perpetual darkness, yet orchestrates the brilliant symphony of your everyday life. And at its very heart beats the eardrum, that impossibly delicate membrane stretched tight as a whisper. Across the threshold between the world outside and the miracle within, imagine, if you will, a drum so sensitive it can detect the footfall of a fly landing on velvet, yet so resilient it withstands the thunderous applause of a stadium crowd night after night, year after year, never resting, never sleeping, eternally vigilant in its sacred duty to translate the chaos of the world into the ordered beauty of perception. This eardrum, your tympanic membrane, is not merely a barrier, but a translator, a poet of pressure waves who speaks fluent vibration and whispers secrets to the tiny architects waiting just beyond its gossamer surface. And when sound waves crash against this delicate drum-like ocean waves against a seashell, it responds with such precision that it can distinguish between the gentle sigh of your lover and the distant rumble of thunder, between the crystalline laughter of a child and the mournful cry of wind through autumn leaves. But the eardrum, magnificent as it is, cannot work alone, for it serves as the conductor to an orchestra of the infinitely small, three bones so tiny they could dance together on the head of a pin. Yet they bear names that echo through the halls of anatomy like ancient titans, the Malleus, the Incus, and the Stapes, though generations of medical students have lovingly renamed them the hammer, anvil, and stirrup, titles that speak to their humble workaday appearance even as they perform miracles that would make angels weep with envy. The Malleus, that faithful hammer, clings to the eardrum like a devoted lover, its handle pressed against the membrane's inner surface, feeling every tremor, every whisper of movement, ready to translate the drum's gentle dance into the mechanical poetry of bone against bone. And when the eardrum shivers with sound, the Malleus responds like a dancer responding to music, passing its motion to the Incus, that steadfast anvil who serves as the middleman in this triumvirate of transformation, receiving the hammer's message and amplifying it, concentrating it, preparing it for the final, crucial handoff to the smallest bone in your entire body. The stapes, that tiny stirrup no bigger than a grain of rice, represents the culmination of millions of years of evolutionary genius. A bone so perfectly designed that engineers study its mechanics with reverence, for this microscopic masterpiece must take the gentle vibrations passed down from its larger companions and focus them into a force powerful enough to disturb the fluid-filled chambers that lie beyond. And it does so with the precision of a Swiss watchmaker and the delicacy of a butterfly's kiss. Its footplate sealed against the oval window like a perfect gasket, ready to pump the fluid of the inner ear with rhythms that match the very heartbeat of sound itself. These three bones, working in concert, create what acousticians call impedance matching, a process so elegant in its simplicity, yet so crucial to your survival that without it, you would live in a world muffled and distant, where voices would sound like whispers from the bottom of a well, and music would lose its power to move your very soul. For they take the weak pressure variations in air and transform them into the strong pressure waves needed to move the dense fluid of your inner ear, amplifying sound by a factor of 22 and ensuring that not a single note of life's grand symphony is lost in translation. Yet even these mechanical marvels would fail without the vigilant guardian that watches over them all, the Eustachian tube, that narrow passage that connects your middle ear to the back of your throat, a tunnel no wider than a pencil lead that serves as your body's own pressure equalizer, ensuring that the delicate machinery of hearing can function in perfect balance regardless of whether you're standing at sea level or ascending a mountain peak, diving to the ocean floor or climbing toward the clouds in an airplane where the very air grows thin and the pressure drops like a stone. This remarkable tube, named for the Italian anatomist who first described its wonders, remains closed most of the time, a sealed gateway that protects your middle ear from the bacteria and moisture of your throat. But when you swallow or yawn or chew, it opens like a valve, allowing air to flow between your middle ear and the outside world, equalizing pressure on both sides of your eardrum and ensuring that this delicate membrane can vibrate freely without the burden of pressure differences that would muffle its song. The Eustachian tube is your body's acknowledgement that you live in a world of changing pressures, where atmospheric forces shift with weather and altitude, where the simple act of taking an elevator to a tall building or diving into a swimming pool can create pressure differentials that would disable your hearing if not for this ingenious biological pressure release valve. And when it functions properly, you barely notice its existence. But when it becomes blocked by illness or inflammation, the world suddenly becomes a place of muffled sounds and uncomfortable pressure, a reminder of how dependent your perception is on this tiny tunnel's proper function. The entire middle ear exists in a state of exquisite balance, a biological ecosystem where humidity must be just right, where pressure must be perfectly matched, where the tiniest bones in your body must move with tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, and where infection or inflammation can transform this paradise of perception into a painful prison of distorted sound and uncomfortable pressure that reminds you just how precious and fragile your connection to the acoustic world truly is. When you experience that familiar pop in your ears during altitude changes, you're witnessing the Eustachian tube in action, equalizing pressure and restoring the delicate balance that allows your eardrum to function at its peak. And in many ways, this simple pop represents one of the most elegant solutions in all of biology. A mechanism so simple a child can understand it, yet so sophisticated that the finest engineer struggled to replicate its efficiency and reliability. The middle ear's triumph lies not just in its individual components, but in their seamless integration. The way the eardrum's vibrations flow effortlessly into the hammer's motion, which transfers perfectly to the anvil's amplification, which culminates in the stirrup's precise pumping action, all while the Eustachian tube maintains the perfect environmental conditions for this mechanical ballet to unfold, creating a system so refined that it can detect sounds ranging from the gentlest whisper to the roar of jet engines, preserving both the delicate nuances of a lover's voice and the raw power of thunder rolling across summer skies. This middle ear of yours has been millions of years in the making, shaped by evolution's patient hand, refined by countless generations of ancestors who survived because they could hear the approach of predators, the call of their children, the subtle sounds that meant the difference between life and death. And now it serves you not just as a survival tool but as a gateway to beauty, allowing you to experience the soaring majesty of symphonies, the intimate whisper of poetry spoken aloud, the laughter of friends gathered around a table, the gentle lullabies that soothed troubled hearts and weary souls. In the grand theater of your sensory experience, the middle ear serves as both the stage and the sophisticated machinery that makes the performance possible, transforming the raw material of vibrating air into the refined art of acoustic perception, ensuring that every sound that matters reaches your consciousness with clarity and precision, from the softest sigh to the most thunderous applause, from the delicate tinkling of wind chimes to the powerful crescendo of a full orchestra in perfect harmony. And it does this work ceaselessly, tirelessly, asking nothing in return but the simple respect of protecting it from the loud noises that could damage its delicate machinery and the infections that could disrupt its perfect balance. The middle ear stands as testament to the fact that the most profound miracles often occur in the smallest spaces, that the most beautiful music can emerge from the most modest instruments, and that your ability to hear the voice of someone you love calling your name across a crowded room depends on the faithful service of bones smaller than sunflower seeds and membranes thinner than tissue paper, working together in perfect harmony to ensure that the symphony of your life plays on, without interruption, note by precious note, breath by sacred breath, heartbeat by irreplaceable heartbeat. Beyond the mechanical marvels of your middle ear lies the most extraordinary frontier in all of human biology, a neural wonderland, so complex and mysterious that scientists are still unraveling its secrets, a realm where sound finally transforms from mere physical vibration into the electrical poetry of consciousness itself, and at the heart of this miraculous domain sits the cochlea, that exquisite snail-shaped spiral that houses what may be the most sophisticated biological machinery ever crafted by evolution's patient hand. Picture, if you will, a shell no larger than a green pea, coiled like a nautilus in the depths of your temporal bone, its 2 3/4 turns creating a labyrinth so intricate that ancient architects would weep at its perfection. And within this spiral palace lies a world of fluid-filled chambers that respond to the stirrup's rhythmic pumping with waves that travel through liquid corridors, like ripples across a hidden lake, carrying within their oscillations the entire spectrum of human experience, from the lowest rumble of distant thunder to the highest trill of a bird's morning song, from the gentle murmur of a mother's voice to the soaring crescendo of violins reaching toward heaven itself. The cochlear's genius lies not just in its elegant spiral design, but in the way it transforms this watery environment into a frequency analyzer of breathtaking precision. For along the length of its coiled passage stretches a membrane called the basilar membrane, a ribbon of tissue that acts like nature's own piano keyboard, with each section tuned to respond to specific frequencies. The wide, flexible base resonating with deep, thunderous sounds, while the narrow, stiff apex dances to the delicate whispers of high-pitched melodies, creating a map of sound that spreads across this spiral highway like colors across a rainbow, each frequency finding its perfect home in this acoustic wonderland. But the basilar membrane, magnificent as it is, serves merely as the stage for the true protagonists of this sensory drama, the hair cells, those microscopic heroes whose very existence seems to mock the limitations of human engineering. For these are not cells in any ordinary sense, but living transducers, biological miracles that stand no taller than the width of a human hair, yet possess the supernatural ability to convert the gentlest mechanical vibration into the electrical language that your brain understands as sound, music, voice, and meaning. These hair cells, arranged in 4 precise rows along the length of the cochlea like soldiers in formation, number approximately 15,000 in each ear, and from their surfaces sprout tiny projections called stereocilia, bundles of microscopic fingers that sway like wheat in an invisible breeze, bending with each wave that passes through the cochlear fluid. And in that bending lies the miracle of transduction. For when these stereocilia tilt even by distances, measured in nanometers, movements smaller than the width of atoms, they open ion channels that allow electrical current to flow, transforming mechanical motion into the neural fire that races along your auditory nerve toward the waiting brain. Each hair cell is a virtuoso performer, capable of responding to vibrations 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a hydrogen atom, sensitive enough to detect movements that would make electrons seem clumsy, yet robust enough to function ceaselessly for decades. sending millions upon millions of electrical signals to your brain every second, creating the continuous stream of auditory information that allows you to navigate your world with confidence and grace, to recognize the voice of a loved one in a crowded room, to distinguish between the subtle harmonics that make a violin sound different from a flute, to hear the emotional undertones that transform simple words into poetry, comfort, threat, or invitation. The outer hair cells, numbering about 12,000, serve as the cochlear's own amplification system, microscopic muscles that can contract and extend with each sound wave, actively boosting weak signals and fine-tuning the sensitivity of their inner neighbors, creating a biological hearing aid system so sophisticated that it can increase the ear's sensitivity by a factor of 100, allowing you to hear sounds so faint they barely disturb the air molecules around them, while protecting you from sounds so intense they could damage the very cells that detect them. The inner hair cells, fewer in number, at only 3,500, but more precious than diamonds, serve as the true messengers of sound, each one connected to multiple nerve fibers that carry their electrical songs directly to the brainstem, where the real magic of hearing begins, as these raw electrical impulses are woven into the complex tapestry of auditory perception, transformed from simple on and off signals into the rich, nuanced soundscape that surrounds you every moment of your life, filled with meaning, emotion, and the countless subtle cues that help you understand not just what you're hearing but what it means, who is speaking, where they are, and how you should respond. Yet the cochlea, for all its magnificence, represents only half of your inner ear's remarkable capabilities. For nestled beside this spiral wonder lies another system entirely, the vestibular apparatus, your body's most sophisticated balance and motion detection system, a collection of fluid-filled chambers and curved tubes that work together to tell you which way is up, how fast you're moving, and where you are in the three-dimensional space that surrounds you, ensuring that you can walk upright, dance with grace, and maintain your equilibrium, even when the world around you spins and tilts and shifts like a carnival ride. This vestibular system consists of two main components: the otolith organs, which detect linear acceleration and the pull of gravity, and the semicircular canals, three curved tubes arranged at right angles to each other, like the corner of a cube, each one filled with fluid and equipped with its own collection of hair cells that respond to rotational movement with the same exquisite sensitivity that makes hearing possible. The otolith organs, the utricle and sacule, contain tiny crystals of calcium carbonate called otoconia, literally earstones, that rest atop a bed of hair cells like pearls on velvet. And when you accelerate forward, or lean to one side, or feel the downward pull of gravity, these crystals shift and bend the hair cells beneath them, sending signals to your brain that allow it to calculate your body's position and movement through space with a precision that would make the finest inertial navigation systems seem primitive by comparison. The semicircular canals, meanwhile, detect rotational movement through an ingenious system of fluid dynamics, for when you turn your head to the left, the fluid in the horizontal canal continues moving due to inertia, bending the hair cells in the canal's ampulla and telling your brain about the rotation, while the vertical canals detect up and down and tilting motions with equal precision, creating a three-dimensional motion detection system so accurate it can sense head movements as small as 1 degree and respond within milliseconds to help you maintain your balance and spatial orientation. These vestibular hair cells, siblings to their cochlear cousins, possess the same miraculous ability to convert mechanical motion into electrical signals, but instead of creating the perception of sound, they generate the sense of balance, orientation, and movement that allows you to navigate your world with confidence, to walk down stairs without counting each step, to catch a ball thrown your way, to turn your head quickly without losing your balance, to dance and run and climb and swim with the fluid grace of a creature perfectly adapted to life in a three-dimensional world. The vestibular system works so seamlessly with your vision and proprioceptive senses that you're rarely aware of its constant vigilance. But when it fails through infection, injury, or simply the wear of age, the world becomes a treacherous place where standing upright requires conscious effort, where simple movements can trigger waves of nausea and disorientation, where the solid ground beneath your feet seems to pitch and roll like the deck of a ship in a storm, reminding you of how much you depend on these tiny organs hidden deep within your skull. The inner ear, with its cochlear spirals and vestibular chambers, represents the culmination of sensory evolution, a masterpiece of biological engineering that transforms the mechanical world of vibration and movement into the electrical language of consciousness, allowing you to experience not just the rich tapestry of sound that surrounds you, but also your precise position within the three-dimensional space you inhabit, creating a seamless integration of auditory and spatial awareness that makes possible everything from the simple pleasure of listening to music while walking down the street to the complex coordination required for athletic performance, artistic expression, and the countless moments of physical grace that punctuate your daily life. Here, in this neural wonderland no larger than a marble, millions of hair cells work in perfect harmony to create your connection to the acoustic and spatial world. Each one a miracle of miniaturization and sensitivity, each one essential to the continuous stream of sensory information that allows you to move through life with awareness, appreciation, and wonder, transforming the silent darkness of your skull into a cathedral of sound and space, rhythm and melody, balance and motion, where every whisper becomes a symphony and every step becomes a dance in the grand choreography of human experience. The inner ear stands as perhaps the most eloquent testimony to the extraordinary complexity and beauty hidden within your own body, a reminder that you carry within you instruments more sophisticated than any technology yet devised, more sensitive than the finest scientific equipment, more reliable than the most advanced machinery, working ceaselessly and silently to ensure that you can hear the voice of love, feel the rhythm of music, and walk upright through the world with the confidence and grace that define the very essence of human experience. Note by precious note, step by sacred step, breath by irreplaceable breath, the journey of sound through your ear begins, not with fanfare or ceremony, but with the gentlest of distibentiza, butterfly landing on a leaf somewhere across a meadow, a lover's sigh in the darkness of dawn, a single raindrop striking the surface of a still pond, moments so delicate they barely disturb the ocean of air that surrounds you. Yet within seconds these microscopic pressure waves will have traveled across space to find the perfectly sculpted gateway that is your outer ear, that magnificent acoustic antenna rising from the side of your head like a living satellite dish, designed by millions of years of evolutionary artistry to capture these fleeting whispers and transform them into the rich symphony of your conscious experience. Your ear begins its work the moment sound waves encounter that remarkable landscape of curves and valleys, ridges and hollows that make up your oracle. For this external ear is far more than a simple funnel. It's a sophisticated acoustic processor that has been shaped by countless generations of survival pressures into a precision instrument, capable of gathering sound waves from a 180-degree arc around your head and focusing them with laser-like accuracy toward the entrance of your ear canal, while simultaneously filtering and enhancing specific frequencies that matter most to human survival and communication, amplifying the crucial range where human voices live, while diminishing the background noise that could mask important sounds, creating your first taste of the acoustic magic that will unfold in the hidden chambers beyond. The intricate geography of your outer ear, with its complex topology of bumps and curves, serves as nature's own acoustic lens, bending and reflecting sound waves in ways that provide your brain with crucial information about where sounds are coming from. For when a sound arrives from your right, it reaches your right ear a fraction of a millisecond before it reaches your left, while the shape of your ear subtly alters the frequency content of sounds depending on their direction, creating acoustic fingerprints that your brain reads like a map, allowing you to pinpoint the location of a voice in a crowded room or turn instinctively toward the source of an unexpected noise, even in complete darkness where your eyes cannot guide you. As sound waves penetrate deeper into your ear canal, that remarkable tunnel carved through the temporal bone of your skull, they encounter an environment that seems almost designed by acoustic engineers who understood the principles of resonance and amplification better than any human designer. For this canal, roughly an inch long and gently curved like a question mark, acts as a natural resonator that amplifies sounds in the frequency range most critical to human speech and communication, boosting the power of incoming sound waves by nearly 10 decibels through the simple physics of standing wave resonance, ensuring that even the faintest whisper carries enough energy to trigger the delicate mechanisms that lie ahead. The ear canal's gentle S-curve serves multiple purposes beyond simple amplification. for this elegant bend protects the precious eardrum from direct trauma, while creating acoustic properties that enhance your ability to hear forward-facing sounds, the voices of people you're talking with, the sounds of approaching opportunities or threats, while naturally attenuating sounds that come from behind, creating a built-in directional preference that helps you focus on what matters most in your immediate environment. And the canal's walls, lined with tiny hairs and specialized glands that produce cerumen, that golden earwax that many people view as an annoyance, but which actually serves as a sophisticated protective barrier against dust, debris, and harmful microorganisms, a self-maintaining acoustic highway that requires no conscious attention, yet performs its vital functions with remarkable efficiency. Year after year, the walls of your ear canal are alive with sensation, innovated with nerve endings that can detect the gentlest touch, the slightest change in temperature, the presence of foreign objects or excessive moisture, creating an early warning system that alerts you to potential problems before they can damage the delicate structures that lie deeper within. And these same nerve endings contribute to some of the most intimate and pleasurable sensations you can experience. For the gentle cleaning of your ears triggers responses that connect to ancient neurological pathways associated with grooming, bonding, and deep relaxation, explaining why the simple act of cleaning your ears can feel so satisfying, and why lovers throughout history have whispered sweet words directly into each other's ears. Understanding instinctively that this acoustic pathway carries more than just sound, it carries intimacy, vulnerability, and trust. As sound waves travel down this resonant tunnel, they are shaped and filtered by every contour, every surface, every subtle variation in the canal's geometry, creating a unique acoustic signature that is as individual as your fingerprints. For no two ear canals are exactly alike, and this individuality means that the same sound arriving at two different people's ears will be subtly different by the time it reaches their ear, contributing to the deeply personal nature of acoustic experience and explaining why the voice that sounds perfectly normal to you when you speak sounds so strange and unfamiliar when you hear it played back from a recording, because you're accustomed to hearing your own voice filtered through the unique acoustic properties of your own ear canal, skull resonance, and bone conduction pathways that no external microphone can replicate. At the end of this acoustic journey through your outer ear lies the destination toward which all these sound waves have been traveling: your eardrum. That gossamer membrane stretched across the deepest recess of your ear canal like the head of a drum waiting for the orchestra to begin, and when those carefully gathered, amplified, and filtered sound waves finally strike this delicate barrier, they encounter a structure so precisely engineered that it can respond to movements smaller than the width of a molecule while remaining strong enough to withstand the explosive pressure changes of a sneeze or the sustained volume of a rock concert. Beginning the next phase of sound's remarkable transformation from airborne vibration to conscious perception, the eardrum itself represents the perfect marriage of sensitivity and durability. A membrane roughly 8 mm in diameter and less than 1/10 of a millimeter thick, yet constructed with multiple layers of specialized tissue that give it the flexibility to respond to the gentlest whisper while maintaining the structural integrity to handle the most intense sounds without tearing. And its conical shape, sloping gently inward toward the middle ear, ensures that sound waves striking its surface are focused and concentrated, maximizing the efficiency of energy transfer from the air-filled outer ear to the mechanical systems that lie beyond. This mechanical transformation happens with such speed and precision that it preserves not just the amplitude and frequency of incoming sounds but also their timing relationships, maintaining the phase coherence that allows your brain to perform sophisticated acoustic analyses, comparing the arrival times and intensity differences between your two ears, to create the three-dimensional soundscape that surrounds you, enabling you to locate sounds in space with accuracy measured in degrees and to separate individual voices from the acoustic chaos of a crowded restaurant or busy marketplace, all because these three tiny bones maintain their mechanical relationships with tolerances that would challenge the most advanced manufacturing techniques, working within margins of error smaller than the wavelength of visible light while operating continuously for decades without lubrication, adjustment, or conscious maintenance on your part. Yet for all their mechanical sophistication, these bones must also serve as guardians, protecting the delicate structures of your inner ear from the potentially damaging effects of very loud sounds. And they accomplish this protective function through one of biology's most ingenious feedback systems, the acoustic reflex, a rapid muscle contraction that occurs automatically when sound levels become dangerously high, causing the stapedius muscle, the smallest skeletal muscle in your entire body, to pull on the stirrup bone and reduce its coupling efficiency to the oval window, while simultaneously the tensor tympani muscle contracts to stiffen the eardrum and reduce its sensitivity to incoming sound, creating a biological noise reduction system that can decrease sound transmission by up to 30 decibels in response to potentially harmful acoustic energy, protecting your precious hair cells from the mechanical trauma that could permanently damage your hearing and rob you of the ability to perceive the subtle acoustic details that make human communication possible. This protective reflex operates with remarkable speed, activating within 40 milliseconds of detecting dangerous sound levels, yet it cannot protect against truly sudden loud noises like gunshots or explosions, which reach peak intensity faster than the reflex can respond, explaining why exposure to sudden loud sounds can cause permanent hearing damage even when your ears' natural protection systems are functioning perfectly, and why the acoustic reflex works best against sustained loud sounds like machinery noise, loud music, or shouting, giving your middle ear bones the ability to adjust their mechanical properties in real time to optimize the balance between preserving your ability to hear important sounds while protecting the irreplaceable neural structures that lie beyond their mechanical domain. The middle ear's mechanical magic extends beyond simple force amplification and protection to include a sophisticated frequency response that emphasizes the acoustic ranges most important to human survival and communication. For the physical properties of the ossicular chain, the mass, stiffness, and damping characteristics of each bone and the joints between them create a resonant system that naturally amplifies sounds in the 1000 to 4000 Hz range, where human speech carries most of its information content, while providing less amplification for very low frequencies that might overwhelm your hearing with the constant rumble of your own heartbeat, breathing, and blood flow, and less amplification for very high frequencies that rarely carry important information but could potentially damage the delicate structures of your inner ear if transmitted at full intensity, creating a biological acoustic filter that has been fine-tuned by evolution to optimize your ability to understand speech, detect danger, and navigate your acoustic environment with maximum efficiency and minimum risk. The ossicular chain also demonstrates remarkable adaptability, for the middle ear muscles can adjust their baseline tension in response to your acoustic environment, tightening slightly in noisy conditions to provide additional protection while relaxing in quiet settings to maximize sensitivity. And this automatic adjustment happens below the threshold of consciousness, managed by brainstem circuits that monitor your acoustic environment continuously and adjust your hearing sensitivity accordingly, ensuring that you can hear a pin drop in a quiet library while still being able to communicate effectively at a noisy party. Both scenarios requiring different mechanical settings in your middle ear bones, but both handled automatically by the sophisticated control systems that govern these tiny mechanical marvels. The middle ear cavity itself, that air-filled space that houses the ossicular chain, must maintain precise environmental conditions for optimal mechanical function, with humidity levels, temperature, and atmospheric pressure all carefully regulated to ensure that the delicate joints between bones remain lubricated and flexible, while the acoustic properties of the air-filled space remain constant. And this environmental control depends on the proper functioning of the eustachian tube, that narrow passage that connects your middle ear to your throat and allows pressure equalization while preventing contamination from bacteria and moisture that could disrupt the mechanical precision of this remarkable system, making the simple act of swallowing or yawning a crucial maintenance function that keeps your hearing system operating at peak efficiency. The mechanical magic of your middle ear represents one of evolution's greatest triumphs, a system so sophisticated that it continues to inspire biomimetic engineers who study its principles in hopes of creating artificial hearing devices that might someday match its performance. Yet no human technology has yet achieved the combination of sensitivity, selectivity, dynamic range, frequency response, protective capability, and reliability that these three tiny bones demonstrate every moment of every day, working in perfect coordination to ensure that the acoustic world reaches your consciousness with clarity, fidelity, and protection from harm, transforming the gentle flutter of your eardrum into the powerful fluid waves that will carry sound's message into the neural wonderland of your inner ear, where the final and most miraculous transformation awaits, the conversion of mechanical energy into the electrical language of consciousness itself, allowing you to experience not just sound but meaning, not just vibration but music, not just noise but the voices of those you love, calling your name across the vast acoustic landscape of human experience, all made possible by 3 bones smaller than rice grains working together in the darkness of your skull with precision that defies comprehension and reliability that spans the entirety of your conscious life, breath by precious breath, heartbeat by sacred heartbeat, sound by irreplaceable sound. Deep within the spiraling chambers of your inner ear, a miracle unfolds every single moment of your waking life. A transformation so profound and elegant that it rivals the greatest symphonies ever composed, yet it happens in complete darkness, in a space no larger than a pea, where mechanical waves born from the vibrations of sound collide with the delicate architecture of human biology and emerge as the electrical poetry that your brain interprets as music, laughter, whispers, and the entire auditory tapestry of existence. This is the story of the cochlear transformation, where physics meets biology in the most intimate dance imaginable, where the crude mechanical energy of sound waves undergoes a metamorphosis as breathtaking as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, transforming into the precise electrical signals that will travel along neural highways to paint the soundscape of your world in the theater of your mind. Picture, if you will, the moment when a sound wave, having journeyed through the air from its source, having been captured by the elegant curves of your outer ear, having been amplified and focused by the ingenious mechanics of your middle ear, finally arrives at the threshold of the cochlea, that snail-shaped marvel of evolutionary engineering that sits like a coiled secret in the depths of your temporal bone, ready to perform the most extraordinary act of translation in the natural world. The cochlea, this spiral sanctuary of hearing, contains within its fluid-filled chambers a structure so remarkable, so perfectly designed for its purpose, that scientists have spent centuries marveling at its elegance. The basilar membrane, nature's own piano keyboard, a ribbon of tissue that stretches from the base to the apex of the cochlear spiral, varying in width and stiffness with the precision of a master craftsman's tool, narrow and rigid at its beginning near the oval window, gradually becoming wider and more flexible as it curves toward the spiral's end, creating a gradient of mechanical properties that serves as the foundation for one of biology's most sophisticated frequency analysis systems. This membrane, measuring just over 3 centimeters in length when uncoiled, carries upon its surface the hair cells, those microscopic sensory receptors that serve as the actual transducers of the auditory system, each one crowned with tiny hair-like projections that bend and sway in response to the fluid movements within the cochlea, like seaweed dancing in an ocean current, except here the current is made of sound itself, and the dance is the very act of hearing being born. When a sound wave enters the cochlea through the oval window, it sets in motion a pressure wave that travels through the perilymph, the fluid that fills the scala vestibuli, one of the 3 chambers that run the length of the cochlear spiral, and this pressure wave, carrying within it all the complex information of the original sound, begins its journey along the basilar membrane, causing it to move in a pattern that is as predictable as it is beautiful. A traveling wave that starts at the base of the cochlea and propagates toward the apex. But here's where the true magic begins to reveal itself, because this membrane, with its carefully graduated mechanical properties, doesn't respond uniformly to this traveling wave. Instead, it acts as a sophisticated frequency analyzer, with each point along its length tuned to respond maximally to a specific frequency of sound. The stiffer, narrower regions near the base, resonating most strongly with high-frequency sounds, while the more flexible, wider regions toward the apex dance most vigorously to the rhythm of low-frequency tones. This phenomenon, known as the tonotopic organization of the cochlea, represents one of nature's most elegant solutions to the problem of frequency analysis, creating a spatial map of sound frequency along the length of the basilar membrane, where high frequencies claim their territory at the base, near the oval window, while low frequencies find their home at the apex, deep within the cochlear spiral. And between these extremes lies a continuous gradient of frequency sensitivity, a spectrum of responsiveness that allows the human ear to distinguish between sounds separated by less than 1% in frequency, a feat of discrimination that surpasses the most sophisticated electronic equipment, all achieved through the simple yet profound principle of mechanical resonance, where each section of the membrane vibrates most strongly when the frequency of the incoming sound matches its natural resonant frequency, like a tuning fork responding to its twin. But the story doesn't end with mechanical vibration, for the basilar membrane's movement is merely the first act in this cochlear symphony, the opening note that sets in motion a cascade of events that will ultimately transform mechanical energy into the electrical language of the nervous system. And this transformation occurs at the hair cells, those remarkable sensory receptors that sit atop the basilar membrane like tiny sensors in a vast detection array, each one equipped with its bundle of stereocilia, arranged in rows of increasing height like the pipes of a miniature organ. And when the basilar membrane moves up and down in response to sound, these hair cells move with it, but their motion is not simply a passive ride, for they are also influenced by the tectorial membrane, a gelatinous structure that hovers above them like a canopy, connected to some of the stereocilia. And when the basilar membrane moves, the relative motion between the hair cells and the tectorial membrane causes the stereocilia to bend, and this bending, this microscopic dance of cellular projections, is where the true magic of transduction occurs. The bending of stereocilia represents the moment of transformation, the precise instant when mechanical energy becomes electrical energy, when the physical world of vibrations and waves becomes the neural world of action potentials and synaptic transmission. And this transformation occurs through a process as elegant as it is efficient, for at the tips of the stereocilia are mechanically gated ion channels, molecular doorways that open and close in response to the mechanical stress of bending. And when these channels open, they allow potassium ions to flow into the hair cell, causing it to depolarize, to shift its electrical potential in a way that triggers the release of neurotransmitter from its base, where it synapses with the dendrites of auditory nerve fibers, those neural messengers that will carry the transformed signal away from the cochlea and into the vast network of the brain's auditory processing centers. This process of mechanotransduction, this conversion of mechanical force into electrical signal, happens with breathtaking speed and precision, for sound waves can change their frequency and amplitude thousands of times per second, and the hair cells must follow these changes faithfully, opening and closing their ion channels, depolarizing and repolarizing, releasing neurotransmitter in patterns that precisely mirror the temporal structure of the original sound, creating a neural code that preserves not just the frequency content of the sound, but also its timing, its intensity, its complex harmonic structure, all the subtle nuances that distinguish a whisper from a shout, a violin from a trumpet, a familiar voice from the voice of a stranger. The inner hair cells, arranged in a single row along the length of the basilar membrane, serve as the primary sensors in this system, each one responding to the movement of its local section of the membrane, creating a spatial pattern of neural activity that maps the frequency content of the sound across the array of auditory nerve fibers, with each fiber connected to hair cells in a specific region of the cochlea, carrying information about a specific range of frequencies. And this spatial organization, this tonotopic mapping, is preserved throughout the auditory pathway, from the cochlea to the brainstem to the cortex, creating a frequency map that the brain can read like a musical score, interpreting the patterns of neural activity as the rich tapestry of sound that fills our world. Deep within the spiraling chambers of your inner ear, a miracle unfolds every single moment of your waking life, a transformation so profound and elegant that it rivals the greatest symphonies ever composed, yet it happens in complete darkness, in a space no larger than a pea, where mechanical waves born from the vibrations of sound collide with the delicate architecture of human biology and emerge as the electrical poetry that your brain interprets as music, laughter, whispers, and the entire auditory tapestry of existence. This is the story of the cochlear transformation, where physics meets biology in the most intimate dance imaginable, where the crude mechanical energy of sound waves undergoes a metamorphosis as breathtaking as a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, transforming into the precise electrical signals that will travel along neural highways to paint the soundscape of your world in the theater of your mind. Picture, if you will, the moment when a sound wave, having journeyed through the air from its source, having been captured by the elegant curves of your outer ear, having been amplified and focused by the ingenious mechanics of your middle ear, finally arrives at the threshold of the cochlea, that snail-shaped marvel of evolutionary engineering that sits like a coiled secret in the depths of your temporal bone, ready to perform the most extraordinary act of translation in the natural world. The cochlea, this spiral sanctuary of hearing, contains within its fluid-filled chambers a structure so remarkable, so perfectly designed for its purpose, that scientists have spent centuries marveling at its elegance. The basilar membrane, nature's own piano keyboard, a ribbon of tissue that stretches from the base to the apex of the cochlear spiral, varying in width and stiffness with the precision of a master craftsman's tool, narrow and rigid at its beginning near the oval window, gradually becoming wider and more flexible as it curves toward the spiral's end, creating a gradient of mechanical properties that serves as the foundation for one of biology's most sophisticated frequency analysis systems. This membrane, measuring just over 3 centimeters in length when uncoiled, carries upon its surface the hair cells, those microscopic sensory receptors that serve as the actual transducers of the auditory system, each one crowned with tiny hair-like projections that bend and sway in response to the fluid movements within the cochlea, like seaweed dancing in an ocean current, except here the current is made of sound itself, and the dance is the very act of hearing being born. When a sound wave enters the cochlea through the oval window, it sets in motion a pressure wave that travels through the perilymph, the fluid that fills the scholar vestibuli, one of the 3 chambers that run the length of the cochlear spiral, and this pressure wave, carrying within it all the complex information of the original sound, begins its journey along the basilar membrane, causing it to move in a pattern that is as predictable as it is beautiful. A traveling wave that starts at the base of the cochlea and propagates toward the apex. But here's where the true magic begins to reveal itself, because this membrane, with its carefully graduated mechanical properties, doesn't respond uniformly to this traveling wave. Instead, it acts as a sophisticated frequency analyzer, with each point along its length tuned to respond maximally to a specific frequency of sound, the stiffer, narrower regions near the base, resonating most strongly with high-frequency sounds, while the more flexible, wider regions toward the apex dance most vigorously to the rhythm of low-frequency tones. But the cochlea is not content to simply analyze frequency, for it also performs the crucial task of amplitude processing, determining not just what frequencies are present in a sound, but how loud they are, and this is achieved through the graded response of the hair cells, which release more neurotransmitter when they are bent more strongly, creating a neural signal whose strength reflects the intensity of the original sound. But the system is far more sophisticated than this simple description suggests, for the cochlea employs a dynamic range compression system that allows it to respond to sounds ranging from the barely audible whisper of leaves, rustling in a gentle breeze, to the overwhelming roar of a jet engine, a range of intensities that spans more than 6 orders of magnitude, achieved through the combined action of inner and outer hair cells working in concert. The outer hair cells, arranged in 3 neat rows parallel to the single row of inner hair cells, serve a different but equally crucial function in this cochlear orchestra, for they are not simply passive sensors like their inner counterparts, but active participants in the mechanical process of hearing, capable of changing their length in response to electrical stimulation, contracting and extending like microscopic muscles. And this remarkable ability, known as electromotility, allows them to amplify the motion of the basilar membrane, to boost weak sounds and enhance the sensitivity of the system, while simultaneously sharpening the frequency selectivity, creating sharper tuning curves that allow for better discrimination between closely spaced frequencies, like adjusting the focus on a microscope to see fine details more clearly. This active process, this mechanical amplification provided by the outer hair cells, is what gives the human ear its extraordinary sensitivity, allowing us to detect sounds so faint that they move the eardrum by distances smaller than the diameter of a hydrogen atom, while simultaneously providing the dynamic range necessary to hear sounds millions of times more intense without damage. And it is this active mechanism that creates the exquisite tuning that allows a trained musician to distinguish between notes separated by just a few cents, or that allows us to pick out a single voice in a crowded restaurant, focusing our auditory attention with surgical precision on the sounds that matter, while filtering out the background. noise that might otherwise overwhelm our senses. The cochlear transformation is not a single event, but a continuous process, happening thousands of times per second as sound waves of different frequencies activate different regions of the basilar membrane, each activation triggering its own cascade of hair cell responses, each hair cell response generating its own pattern of neural activity, and all of these individual responses combining to create a rich, multidimensional representation of the acoustic world, a neural portrait painted in the language of action potentials and synaptic connections, where the brushstrokes are the firing patterns of auditory nerve fibers, and the colors are the different frequencies and intensities that make up the sounds of life. This process continues throughout our lives, from the first cry of a newborn baby to the final words of farewell whispered by an aging grandparent. The cochlea faithfully transforming the mechanical waves of sound into the electrical signals that allow us to hear and interpret the world around us, to understand speech and appreciate music, to detect the approach of danger and the call of loved ones, to experience the full emotional impact of a symphony or the intimate whisper of a secret shared between friends. And all of this happens in the darkness of the inner ear, in a space so small it could fit on the tip of your finger, yet containing within it the entire foundation of human auditory experience. The beauty of the cochlear transformation lies not just in its mechanical elegance or its biological sophistication, but in its ability to preserve the essential character of sound while translating it into a completely different physical medium, like a master translator who captures not just the words of a poem but its rhythm, its emotion, its deeper meaning. The cochlea takes the vibrations of air molecules and transforms them into the electrical poetry of neural signals, maintaining the temporal patterns that give speech its meaning, the harmonic relationships that give music its emotional power, the subtle variations in timing and intensity that allow us to recognize the voices of people we love, even in a crowded room filled with other sounds. And perhaps most remarkably of all, this transformation happens effortlessly, unconsciously, requiring no thought or intention on our part, as automatic as breathing, as natural as the beating of our hearts. Yet underlying this apparent simplicity is a process of staggering complexity, involving thousands of hair cells, tens of thousands of auditory nerve fibers, and millions of precisely coordinated molecular events, all working together in perfect harmony to create the miracle of hearing, to bridge the gap between the physical world of sound waves and the perceptual world of auditory experience, transforming the mechanical into the electrical, the physical into the neural, the objective into the subjective, in a process that continues to amaze and inspire scientists and philosophers alike, a testament to the extraordinary capabilities of biological systems and the profound interconnectedness of physics and biology in the creation of human consciousness and experience. This is the story of the cochlear transformation, where sound becomes sensation, where waves become wonder, where the mechanical poetry of vibration becomes the electrical symphony of neural activity, and where, in the space of just a few milliseconds, the entire richness of the auditory world is captured, analyzed, and prepared for its journey to the brain, where it will be transformed once again, from electrical signals into the conscious experience of hearing, into the music and voices and sounds that fill our lives with meaning and beauty, completing a journey that began with the simple vibration of air molecules and ends with the complex tapestry of human auditory experience, a journey that reminds us of the extraordinary miracle of perception and the profound ways in which our biological systems connect us to the world around us, allowing us to hear not just sound, but the very heartbeat of existence itself. In the hidden cathedral of your inner ear, where silence and sound meet in eternal dialogue, there exist the most remarkable performers in the entire symphony of hearing. Microscopic virtuosos so small that thousands could dance on the head of a pin, yet so powerful that without them, the entire world would fall into absolute silence. These are the hair cells, the true heroes of auditory perception, living bridges between the mechanical world of vibration and the electrical realm of neural communication, and their story is one of breathtaking specialization, of two distinct types of cellular artists working in perfect harmony, each with their own role in the grand performance of hearing, each so exquisitely designed for their purpose that they represent some of the most sophisticated biological machinery ever discovered, existing in a realm where engineering meets artistry, where the laws of physics dance with the poetry of life itself. These microscopic marvels, no larger than the width of a human hair, carry within their delicate structures the entire responsibility for transforming the mechanical energy of sound waves into the electrical language that your brain understands. And they do this through an elegant performance that begins with their crowning glory, the stereocilia, those hair-like projections that rise from their surfaces like the strings of a celestial harp, swaying and bending in response to the fluid movements within the cochlea, each movement a note in the endless song of perception, each bend a moment of transformation where the physical world becomes the world of sensation and meaning. The inner hair cells, arranged in a single pristine row along the entire length of the basilar membrane, like pearls on nature's most precious necklace, serve as the primary sensory receptors of the auditory system, the true transducers that capture the mechanical vibrations of the basilar membrane and convert them into the electrical signals that will ultimately become your conscious experience of sound. And these remarkable cells, numbering approximately 3,500 in each human cochlea, are positioned with mathematical precision, each one perfectly placed to sample the motion of its local section of the membrane, creating a spatial map of frequency that mirrors the tonotopic organization of the entire auditory system, with each inner hair cell serving as a dedicated frequency detector, a living microphone tuned to respond most strongly to sounds within a specific range of frequencies, from the thunderous low notes that make your chest vibrate to the crystalline, high frequencies that sparkle like stars in the auditory firmament. Each inner hair cell is a masterpiece of cellular architecture, its body containing all the molecular machinery necessary for life and function, but it is crowned by its bundle of stereocilia, typically numbering between 50 and 100 per cell, arranged in rows of increasing height, like the pipes of a magnificent organ. And these stereocilia are not merely passive structures but active participants in the transduction process, connected to each other by tiny protein filaments, called tip links, molecular chains that stretch between adjacent stereocilia, like the guy wires of a suspension bridge. And when sound causes the basilar membrane to move, these stereocilia bend together as a unit, and the tension on the tip links changes, opening and closing mechanically gated ion channels at the tips of the stereocilia, allowing potassium ions to rush into the cell and trigger the electrical events that will ultimately carry the message of sound to the brain. But the inner hair cells, for all their importance, are only part of the story. For alongside them, arranged in 3 neat rows, like a perfectly organized choir, stand the outer hair cells, numbering approximately 12,000 in each cochlea, and these cells, while similar in many ways to their inner counterparts, possess a remarkable and unique ability that sets them apart from almost every other cell in the human body, for they are not merely sensors but active participants in the mechanical process of hearing, capable of changing their length in response to electrical stimulation, contracting and extending like microscopic muscles, and this extraordinary capability, known as electromotility, allows them to serve as biological amplifiers, boosting the sensitivity of the hearing system by as much as 1,000-fold, taking weak sounds that would otherwise be lost in the background noise of biological processes and amplifying them to detectable levels, while simultaneously sharpening the frequency selectivity of the system, creating the precise tuning that allows us to distinguish between sounds that are separated by less than 1% in frequency. The outer hair cells accomplish this remarkable feat through a specialized protein called prestin, embedded in their cell membranes like millions of tiny motors, and when these cells are electrically stimulated, the prestin molecules change their shape, causing the entire cell to contract or extend with a speed and precision that rivals the finest mechanical devices. And this movement, this cellular dance, feeds back into the mechanical system of the cochlea, amplifying the motion of the basilar membrane in a frequency-specific way, creating a biological feedback loop that enhances the very vibrations that caused it, like a singer whose voice resonates with the acoustics of a concert hall, amplifying and enriching the sound through the magic of constructive interference. The stereocilia that crown both types of hair cells are themselves marvels of biological engineering, each one a slender projection filled with cross-linked actin filaments that give it the perfect combination of flexibility and strength, able to bend gracefully in response to the fluid movements within the cochlea while maintaining their structural integrity through millions of cycles of movement. And at the molecular level, these stereocilia are equipped with the most sensitive mechanotransduction machinery known to biology, capable of detecting movements as small as a few nanometers, distances so tiny that they approach the thermal noise limit of biological systems, the random molecular motions that would seem to make such sensitive detection impossible. Yet the hair cells have evolved mechanisms to work at this fundamental physical limit, using the statistics of molecular motion to extract signal from noise with an efficiency that approaches theoretical perfection. The arrangement of stereocilia on each hair cell follows a precise geometric pattern, with the tallest stereocilia positioned at one edge of the bundle and progressively shorter ones arranged in neat rows, creating a staircase-like structure that maximizes the mechanical advantage of the system. And this arrangement is not random, but follows a developmental program so precise that each stereocilium knows exactly where it belongs and how tall it should grow, a testament to the extraordinary specificity of biological development and the remarkable ways in which genes can encode not just the components of biological systems but their precise three-dimensional organization. The tip links that connect adjacent stereocilia are themselves molecular marvels. Protein chains composed of coherent molecules that stretch between the stereocilia like molecular springs. And these links are not merely passive connectors but active components of the transduction mechanism, for at the upper end of each tip link, where it attaches to the membrane of the taller stereocilia, sits a mechanically gated ion channel, a molecular door that opens and closes in response to the tension in the tip link. And when sound causes the stereocilia to bend toward the tallest row, the tip links stretch, pulling open these channels and allowing potassium ions to flow into the cell, depolarizing it and triggering the cascade of events that leads to neurotransmitter release. But when the stereocilia bend in the opposite direction, the tip links relax, the channels close, and the cell creating a push-pull system that can follow the rapid oscillations of sound waves with extraordinary fidelity, preserving the temporal structure of sounds with microsecond precision. This process of mechanotransduction, this conversion of mechanical force into electrical signal, represents one of the fastest forms of sensory transduction in biology. For the hair cells must be able to follow sound waves that can oscillate thousands of times per second, and they accomplish this through a direct mechanical coupling between the stimulus and the transduction mechanism, bypassing the slower biochemical cascades that characterize other forms of sensory transduction. And the result is a system that can respond to changes in sound pressure within microseconds, fast enough to preserve the phase relationships between different frequency components that are crucial for sound localization and the perception of complex sounds like speech and music. And this speed comes not at the cost of sensitivity, but in combination with it. For the hair cells can detect sounds so faint that they move the stereocilia by distances comparable to the diameter of individual atoms, a level of sensitivity that seems to defy the random thermal motions that constantly buffet all biological molecules. The hair cells are not merely passive transducers but active participants in their own survival and function, constantly working to maintain their delicate molecular machinery in the face of the mechanical stresses and metabolic demands of their role. And they accomplish this through sophisticated homeostatic mechanisms that regulate the concentrations of ions within their cytoplasm, maintain the integrity of their stereocilia, and provide the energy necessary for their continuous operation. But these mechanisms, for all their sophistication, are also the source of the hair cell's greatest vulnerability, for they are among the most metabolically active cells in the body, requiring a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients to fuel their energy-intensive processes. And when this supply is interrupted, or when the cells are exposed to excessive mechanical stress, toxic substances, or other harmful conditions, they can be damaged or destroyed. And unlike many other types of cells in the body, hair cells in mammals have little or no ability to regenerate once they are lost. The vulnerability of hair cells to damage is one of the most tragic aspects of their story. For these microscopic marvels, despite their extraordinary capabilities, are also remarkably fragile, susceptible to damage from a wide variety of sources, and once damaged, they cannot repair themselves or be replaced, leading to permanent hearing loss that affects millions of people worldwide. And the mechanisms of this damage are as varied as they are devastating, ranging from the mechanical trauma caused by exposure to excessively loud sounds, which can literally tear the stereocilia from the hair cells or cause the cells themselves to die from metabolic exhaustion, to the toxic effects of certain medications, particularly some antibiotics and chemotherapy drugs, which can poison the cellular machinery and lead to widespread hair cell death, to the gradual accumulation of damage from aging, oxidative stress, and the normal wear and tear of a lifetime of hearing. When hair cells are exposed to loud sounds, the mechanical forces generated within the cochlea can exceed the structural limits of the delicate cellular machinery, causing the stereocilia to bend beyond their breaking point, literally snapping the tip links that connect them, or causing the stereocilia themselves to break off from the cell surface. And when this happens, the affected hair cells can no longer transduce sound effectively, leading to a loss of hearing sensitivity in the frequency range served by those particular cells. And because the hair cells are arranged tonotop along the length of the cochlea, damage to specific regions results in hearing loss for specific frequencies, which is why noise-induced hearing loss often begins with a loss of sensitivity to high-frequency sounds, the region of the cochlea most vulnerable to acoustic trauma because of its position near the base, where sound energy first enters the system and where the mechanical forces are often greatest. The toxic effects of certain drugs on hair cells represent another major cause of hearing loss, and these effects can be particularly devastating because they often affect large numbers of hair cells simultaneously, leading to profound hearing loss that can develop rapidly and without warning. And the mechanisms by which these drugs damage hair cells are complex and varied, but they often involve disruption of the cellular machinery responsible for maintaining ionic balance, generating energy, or protecting against oxidative damage. And once these fundamental cellular processes are disrupted, the hair cells quickly die, taking with them the irreplaceable capacity for hearing in the affected frequency ranges. And because different drugs tend to affect different types of hair cells preferentially, the pattern of hearing loss can vary depending on the specific toxic agent involved. Perhaps most heartbreaking of all is the gradual loss of hair cells that occurs with aging, a process known as presbycusis, which affects virtually everyone to some degree as they grow older. And this age-related hearing loss typically begins with the high-frequency hair cells near the base of the cochlea, gradually progressing to affect lower frequencies as well. And while the mechanisms underlying this age-related damage are not fully understood, they likely involve the gradual accumulation of oxidative damage, the progressive failure of cellular repair mechanisms, and the effects of a lifetime of exposure to environmental noise and other stressors. And the result is a slow but inexorable loss of the microscopic marvels that make hearing possible, a gradual silencing of the cellular orchestra that has provided the soundtrack to an entire lifetime of experience. The loss of hair cells has profound implications, not just for hearing sensitivity, but for all aspects of auditory perception. For these cells are not merely volume controls, but sophisticated frequency analyzers, temporal processors, and dynamic range compressors, and when they are damaged or destroyed, the entire auditory system suffers, leading not just to a reduction in the ability to hear quiet sounds, but to difficulties with speech, understanding, music appreciation, sound localization, and the ability to hear in noisy environments. And these functional deficits can have far-reaching consequences for communication, social interaction, cognitive function, and quality of life, transforming what might seem like a simple sensory deficit into a complex disability that affects virtually every aspect of human experience. Yet even in the face of this vulnerability, the hair cells continue to inspire hope and wonder. For scientists around the world are working to understand the mechanisms of hair cell damage and death, to develop new strategies for protecting these precious cells from harm, and to explore the possibility of regenerating lost hair cells or replacing their function with artificial devices. And while these efforts are still in their early stages, they hold the promise of one day restoring hearing to those who have lost it, of bringing back the music and voices and sounds that give life its richness and meaning. And in the meantime, the story of the hair cells serves as a reminder of the extraordinary complexity and beauty of biological systems, of the remarkable ways in which evolution has crafted solutions to the fundamental challenges of life, and of the profound interconnectedness between the physical and biological worlds, where the dance of molecules becomes the symphony of sensation, where the movement of stereocilia becomes the movement of the human spirit, and where the microscopic marvels of the inner ear continue to transform the vibrations of the world into the conscious experience of hearing that connects us to each other and to the universe around us. Deep within the spiraling chambers of your cochlea, where hair cells have just completed their miraculous transformation of sound into electrical signals, a new journey begins. One that will carry these precious neural messages from the darkness of the inner ear into the blazing networks of consciousness itself. And this journey starts with some of the most remarkable neurons in your entire body, the spiral ganglion cells, whose cell bodies huddle together in the bony core of the cochlea like a secret society of messengers, each one extending a delicate dendrite inward to synapse with the hair cells and a long axon outward, to join the great neural highway that will carry auditory information to the brain. These spiral ganglion neurons, numbering approximately 30,000 in each ear, are the first neurons in the auditory pathway, the initial translators in the long chain of neural processing that will ultimately transform the electrical whispers of hair cells into the rich tapestry of conscious hearing. And they are unique among neurons in their exquisite sensitivity to the temporal patterns of sound, capable of firing in precise synchrony with the acoustic waveforms that originally entered the ear, preserving the exact timing relationships that are crucial for sound localization, pitch perception, and the ability to understand speech in noisy environments. The architecture of these spiral ganglion neurons reflects their specialized function, for they are bipolar cells, meaning they have two main processes extending from their cell bodies, one reaching inward toward the hair cells and another reaching outward toward the brain, and this arrangement allows them to serve as faithful relay stations, passing the electrical signals from the hair cells along to the central nervous system with minimal processing or modification, preserving the purity of the original signal while amplifying it enough to survive the long journey through the auditory nerve to the brain's. Each spiral ganglion neuron is connected to hair cells in a specific region of the cochlea, maintaining the tonotopic organization that began with the basilar membrane, so that neurons connected to the base of the cochlea carry information about high-frequency sounds, while those connected to the apex carry information about low frequencies. And this spatial organization of frequency information is preserved throughout the entire auditory pathway, creating a neural map of sound frequency that the brain can read like a musical score. When these spiral ganglion neurons fire, they send their electrical signals racing along the auditory nerve, a bundle of approximately 30,000 axons that exits the cochlea through the internal auditory meatus, a small opening in the temporal bone, and travels through the cerebellopontine angle, that narrow space between the cerebellum and the brainstem, where several important cranial nerves make their journey from the peripheral organs to the central nervous system. And it is here, in this confined space, that the auditory nerve is most vulnerable to damage from acoustic neuromas, tumors that can grow on the nerve and compress it, leading to hearing loss and other neurological symptoms. The auditory nerve fibers are among the most rapidly conducting neurons in the body, capable of transmitting electrical signals at speeds of up to 120 meters per second, fast enough to preserve the precise timing relationships that are essential for auditory processing, and they accomplish this through their heavy myelination, the thick insulating sheaths that wrap around their axons like electrical insulation, allowing the electrical signals to jump from node to node in a process called saltatory conduction, dramatically increasing the speed of signal transmission while reducing the energy requirements of neural communication. As the auditory nerve approaches the brainstem, it carries within its fibers a complete representation of the acoustic world, with different fibers responding to different frequencies, different intensities, and different temporal patterns. And this information is organized, not randomly but according to strict topographic principles, with fibers carrying similar types of information grouped together, creating a neural organization that mirrors the mechanical organization of the cochlea itself. And when these fibers finally reach their destination in the brainstem, they will synapse with neurons in the cochlear nucleus, the first central processing station in the auditory pathway. But the journey from cochlea to brainstem is more than just a simple relay of information, for even during this initial stage of neural transmission, the auditory system begins to extract and emphasize certain features of the acoustic signal that will be crucial for later processing stages. The firing patterns of auditory nerve fibers are themselves works of art, precise temporal sculptures that mirror the acoustic waveforms that originally entered the ear. and these patterns contain within them all the information necessary for the brain to reconstruct the original sound, to determine its frequency, its intensity, its location in space, and its meaning. And the spiral ganglion neurons accomplish this remarkable feat through their ability to phase lock to the acoustic wave, firing action potentials at specific phases of the sound wave, so that the temporal pattern of neural firing directly reflects the temporal pattern of the original acoustic stimulus. And this phase locking is so precise that it can preserve timing, information with microsecond accuracy, allowing the brain to use these tiny timing differences to determine the location of sound sources in space and to separate different sound sources in complex acoustic environments. The auditory nerve pathway represents the beginning of the transformation from peripheral sensation to central perception, the first step in the long journey that will ultimately lead to the conscious experience of hearing. And it is remarkable that this transformation begins not with complex processing or analysis, but with faithful preservation, with the simple but profound act of carrying the electrical poetry of the hair cells from the darkness of the inner ear into the light of consciousness, where it will be analyzed, interpreted, and transformed into the rich auditory experience that fills our lives with music, speech, and the endless symphony of the world around us. And as these neural signals race along the auditory nerve toward their destination in the brainstem, they carry with them not just information about sound, but the very essence of our connection to the acoustic world, the neural foundation upon which all of auditory perception is built. When the auditory nerve fibers finally reach their destination in the brainstem, carrying their precious cargo of electrical signals from the cochlea, they encounter the first true processing center in the central auditory pathway. The cochlear nucleus, a complex structure that sits at the junction between the medulla and the pons, nestled against the lateral aspect of the brainstem, like a neural way station, where the simple relay function of the auditory nerve gives way to the sophisticated analysis that will characterize all subsequent stages of auditory processing. And it is here, in this remarkable collection of neurons, that the brain begins its work of extracting meaning from the temporal and spectral patterns that have traveled from the ear, transforming the faithful representation of sound carried by the auditory nerve into multiple parallel streams of information, each specialized for different aspects of auditory analysis, each contributing to the rich tapestry of auditory perception that will ultimately emerge in the cortex. The cochlear nucleus is not a single homogeneous structure, but rather a complex assembly of three distinct divisions, each with its own cellular architecture, its own patterns of connectivity, and its own specialized function in the processing of auditory information. And these divisions, known as the anteroventral cochlear nucleus, the posteroventral cochlear nucleus, and the dorsal cochlear nucleus, receive input from different types of auditory nerve fibers and project to different targets in the brainstem, creating multiple parallel pathways that allow the brain to simultaneously analyze different aspects of the acoustic signal, much like a prism that splits white light into its component colors, revealing the hidden complexity that lies within what appears to be a simple signal. The anteroventral cochlear nucleus, the first of these divisions, contains neurons that are exquisitely sensitive to the temporal patterns of sound, specialized for preserving and enhancing the precise timing, information that is crucial for sound localization and the perception of pitch. And these neurons, known as bushy cells because of their distinctive dendritic morphology, receive powerful synaptic input from the auditory nerve fibers and respond with remarkable temporal precision, firing action potentials that are locked to the phase of the acoustic waveform with even greater precision than the auditory nerve fibers themselves. And this enhanced temporal processing is achieved through the specialized synaptic connections between the auditory nerve fibers and the bushy cells. Massive synaptic terminals known as inbulbs of Held that can rapidly and reliably drive the postsynaptic neurons to fire, ensuring that the temporal information carried by the auditory nerve is not only preserved, but actually enhanced as it passes through this first processing stage. The posteroventral cochlear nucleus contains a different type of neuron, the octopus cells, which are specialized for detecting the onset of sounds and for processing the temporal envelope of complex acoustic signals. And these neurons, with their distinctive octopus-like dendritic trees that receive input from auditory nerve fibers across a wide range of frequencies, are perfectly designed to detect the moment when a sound begins, firing a brief, precisely timed burst of action. potentials that signals the arrival of a new acoustic event, and this onset detection is crucial for many aspects of auditory processing, from the ability to separate different sound sources in complex acoustic environments to the perception of speech sounds, where the precise timing of acoustic events carries crucial information about the identity and meaning of the sounds we hear. The dorsal cochlear nucleus, the most complex of the three divisions, contains neurons that are specialized for more sophisticated forms of auditory analysis, including the processing of spectral information, the detection of sound motion, and the integration of auditory information with input from other sensory systems. And these neurons, with their complex dendritic trees and their intricate patterns of connectivity, begin the process of transforming the faithful representation of sound carried by the auditory nerve into the more abstract representations that will characterize higher levels of the auditory system, extracting features and patterns that will be crucial for sound identification, localization, and the understanding of complex acoustic scenes. From the cochlear nucleus, the auditory pathway splits into multiple parallel streams, each carrying different types of information to different targets in the brainstem. And the most important of these targets is the superior olivary complex, a collection of nuclei that lies in the rostral medulla and caudal pons, and it is here, in this remarkable structure, that information from the two ears first comes together, where the brain begins the complex process of comparing the acoustic signals from the left and right ears to determine the location of sound sources in space. And this binaural processing represents one of the most sophisticated forms of neural computation in the entire nervous system, requiring the precise comparison of timing and intensity differences between the two ears. That can be as small as a few microseconds or a few decibels. The superior olivary complex contains several distinct nuclei, each specialized for different aspects of binaural processing. And the most important of these are the medial superior olive, which is specialized for detecting interaural time differences, the tiny delays between when a sound reaches one ear versus the other, and the lateral superior olive, which is specialized for detecting interaural intensity differences, the small differences in loudness between the two ears that result from the acoustic shadow cast by the head. And these two nuclei work together to create a neural map of auditory space, with different neurons responding maximally to sounds coming from different locations. And this spatial map is so precise that it can localize sounds to within a few degrees of accuracy, allowing us to quickly and accurately determine where sounds are coming from, even in complex acoustic environments. The medial superior olive accomplishes its remarkable feat of time difference detection through one of the most elegant examples of neural computation in the brain. For its neurons receive input from both ears through pathways that have been carefully calibrated to preserve the precise timing relationships between the two ears, and these neurons act as coincidence detectors, firing maximally when the inputs from the two ears arrive at exactly the same time. And by systematically varying the lengths of the pathways from the two ears, the brain creates an array of neurons that are tuned to different interaural time differences, with some neurons responding maximally when the sound arrives first at the left ear, others responding maximally when it arrives first at the right ear, and still others responding maximally when it arrives at both ears simultaneously. And the pattern of activity across this array of neurons provides a precise neural code for the location of the sound source in space. From the superior olivary complex, the auditory pathway continues its journey toward the cortex, but it makes one more crucial stop in the brainstem at the inferior colliculus, a large nucleus in the midbrain that serves as the major integrator center for auditory processing, receiving input from virtually all of the lower auditory nuclei and integrating this information into increasingly complex representations of the acoustic world. And it is here, in this remarkable structure, that the parallel streams of auditory processing that began in the cochlear nucleus converge and interact, creating neural representations that capture not just the frequency, intensity, and location of sounds, but their temporal patterns, their spectral complexity, and their behavioral significance. The inferior colliculus is organized as a series of neural maps, with different regions specialized for different aspects of auditory processing. And the most prominent of these is the tonotopic map, which preserves the frequency organization that began in the cochlea and has been maintained throughout the auditory pathway. But superimposed on this frequency map are other maps that represent sound intensity, sound location, and the temporal patterns of sound, creating a multi-dimensional representation of auditory space that captures the full complexity of the acoustic world. And it is this rich, multi-dimensional representation that will be transmitted to the cortex, where it will undergo the final transformations that will turn neural activity into conscious auditory experience. The journey from the cochlea to the cortex, with its stops at the cochlear nucleus, the superior olivary complex, and the inferior colliculus, represents more than just a simple relay of information from the periphery to the center. For, at each stage of this journey, the brain extracts new information from the acoustic signal, emphasizes certain features while de-emphasizing others, and creates increasingly sophisticated representations of the auditory world. And by the time the auditory information reaches the cortex, it has been transformed from the simple mechanical vibrations that originally entered the ear into a rich multidimensional neural representation that captures not just the physical properties of sound but its perceptual significance, its emotional impact, and its meaning in the context of human experience. High in the temporal lobe of your brain, nestled within the depths of the lateral sulcus, like a hidden treasure waiting to be discovered, lies the auditory cortex, that remarkable expanse of neural tissue where the long journey of sound from the ear finally reaches its destination, where the electrical signals that began as simple vibrations in the air are transformed into the rich, conscious experience of hearing, where the mechanical becomes the meaningful, where the physical becomes the perceptual, and where the abstract patterns of neural activity become the music, speech, and environmental sounds that fill our lives with richness and meaning. And it is here, in this extraordinary region of the brain, that the miracle of auditory perception reaches its culmination, where sound becomes not just sensation but understanding, not just hearing but listening, not just neural activity but conscious experience. The primary auditory cortex, designated as A1 by neuroscientists, occupies a strip of cortical tissue that runs along the superior temporal gyrus, hidden from view within the depths of the lateral sulcus. And this region, though small in size, contains within its neural architecture one of the most sophisticated information processing systems in the entire brain, capable of analyzing the complex temporal and spectral patterns of sound with a precision and flexibility that continues to amaze researchers. And the organization of this cortical area reflects the tonotopic mapping that has been preserved throughout the entire auditory pathway, with neurons responsive to high frequencies located in one region and neurons responsive to low frequencies located in another, creating a neural map of sound frequency that mirrors the mechanical organization of the cochlea itself. But this cortical frequency map is not a simple copy of the cochlear map, but rather a highly processed and abstracted version, where the raw frequency information from the ear has been transformed into something far more sophisticated and meaningful. The neurons of the primary auditory cortex are organized in a columnar fashion, with cells that share similar response properties grouped together in vertical columns that extend from the surface of the cortex to the white matter below. And within each column, neurons are specialized for different aspects of auditory processing, some responding to simple tones, others to complex sounds, some sensitive to the timing of acoustic events, others to the spectral content of sounds, and still others to the spatial location of sound sources. And this columnar organization allows the cortex to simultaneously analyze multiple aspects of the acoustic signal, extracting different types of information in parallel and integrating them into a coherent representation of the auditory world that captures not just what we hear, but how we hear it, not just the content of sounds, but their perceptual significance. But the primary auditory cortex is just the beginning of cortical auditory processing, for surrounding it are multiple secondary auditory areas, each specialized for different aspects of auditory analysis, each contributing to the rich tapestry of auditory perception in its own unique way. And these secondary areas, with names like the planum temporale, the superior temporal gyrus, and the superior temporal sulcus, are where the brain begins the complex process of extracting meaning from sound, where the abstract patterns of neural activity in the primary auditory cortex are transformed into the recognition of familiar voices, the understanding of spoken words, the appreciation of musical melodies, and the emotional responses that make Certain sounds so powerful and meaningful in our lives, the planum temporale, located just posterior to the primary auditory cortex, is one of the most important of these secondary areas, for it is here that the brain begins to process the complex temporal patterns that are crucial for speech perception, analyzing the rapid sequences of acoustic events that make up spoken words and extracting from them the phonetic information that allows us to understand language. And this area is larger in the left hemisphere than in the right hemisphere. Most people, reflecting the left hemisphere's specialization for language processing, and damage to this area can result in difficulties with speech comprehension, even when hearing sensitivity remains normal, demonstrating the crucial role that cortical processing plays in transforming the raw acoustic information from the ear into meaningful linguistic information. The superior temporal sulcus, another important secondary auditory area, is specialized for processing the spectral and temporal patterns that are important for recognizing different types of sounds. From the identification of musical instruments, to the recognition of environmental sounds, to the perception of auditory objects in complex acoustic scenes, and neurons in this area respond not just to simple acoustic features, but to complex combinations of features that define different categories of sounds, creating neural representations that capture the perceptual significance of sounds rather than just their physical properties. And it is this transformation from physical to perceptual that represents one of the most remarkable achievements of cortical auditory processing. The secondary auditory areas are also where the brain begins to integrate auditory information with information from other sensory systems, creating the multisensory representations that are crucial for our understanding of the world around us. For sounds do not exist in isolation, but are part of a rich sensory environment that includes visual, tactile, and other sensory information, and the brain must integrate all of this information to create a coherent representation of the world. And this integration begins in the secondary auditory areas, where neurons respond not just to sounds, but to the visual and tactile events that often accompany sounds, creating neural representations that capture the full richness of multisensory experience. The cortical processing of music represents one of the most fascinating aspects of auditory cortex function. For music, unlike speech or environmental sounds, has no obvious survival value, yet it is one of the most powerful and universal forms of human experience, capable of evoking strong emotions, creating powerful memories, and bringing people together in ways that few other stimuli can. And the brain's response to music involves not just the auditory cortex but multiple regions throughout the brain, including areas involved in emotion, memory, motor control, and reward, creating a neural network that captures the full complexity of musical experience, from the simple pleasure of a beautiful melody to the complex emotions evoked by a symphony, from the motor responses that make us want to dance to the social connections that make music such an important part of human culture. The auditory cortex also plays a crucial role in auditory attention, the ability to focus on specific sounds in complex acoustic environments while ignoring others. And this selective attention is mediated by top-down signals from higher-order brain areas that modulate the activity of auditory cortex neurons, enhancing the responses to attended sounds while suppressing the responses to unattended sounds. And this attentional modulation is so powerful that it can completely change the neural representation of the acoustic environment, making some sounds seem louder and more prominent while making others fade into the background. And this ability to selectively attend to specific sounds is crucial for our ability to function in complex acoustic environments. From following a conversation at a noisy party to listening to a particular instrument in an orchestra, the plasticity of the auditory cortex, its ability to change and adapt throughout life in response to experience, represents another remarkable aspect of cortical auditory processing. For the neural connections within the auditory cortex are not fixed but are constantly being modified by experience, and this plasticity allows the brain to adapt to new acoustic environments, to learn new sounds, and to recover from damage. And it is this plasticity that allows musicians to develop extraordinary auditory skills, that allows people to learn new languages throughout life, and that gives hope for the development of new treatments for hearing loss and other auditory disorders. The auditory cortex is also where the brain creates what we might call the auditory scene, the perceptual organization of the acoustic environment that allows us to separate different sound sources, to group related sounds together, and to understand the spatial and temporal relationships between different acoustic events. And this scene analysis is one of the most computationally challenging tasks that the auditory system must perform, requiring the integration of multiple sources of information and the application of sophisticated perceptual rules that allow the brain to make sense of the complex acoustic environments that we encounter in daily life. And the auditory cortex accomplishes this remarkable feat through the coordinated activity of thousands of neurons, each contributing its own piece of information to the overall perceptual picture. The transformation of sound into meaning that occurs in the auditory cortex represents the culmination of one of the most remarkable journeys in all of biology, a journey that begins with the simple mechanical vibration of air molecules and ends with the rich, conscious experience of hearing. And along the way, this journey involves the coordinated activity of thousands of hair cells, millions of neurons, and countless synaptic connections, all working together to create the auditory experience that connects us to the world around us, that allows us to communicate with others, that fills our lives with music and meaning, and that reminds us of the extraordinary complexity and beauty of the human brain and its ability to transform the physical world into the world of conscious experience. The human ear is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, capable of detecting sounds across a frequency range that spans from the deep, rumbling bass notes at 20 Hz, vibrations so low they're felt as much as heard, all the way up to the crystalline highs of 20,000 Hz, frequencies so sharp they seem to sparkle in the air. And within this remarkable 10-octave range lies the entire universe of human auditory experience. From the thunderous roar of a waterfall to the delicate whisper of leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, from the bone-shaking bass of a pipe organ to the ethereal harmonics of a piccolo. And yet this range, impressive as it may seem, represents only a tiny slice of the acoustic spectrum that exists in nature, for elephants communicate using infrasonic calls below our hearing threshold, while dolphins and bats navigate their worlds using ultrasonic frequencies far above our perception, reminding us that our auditory window, though wonderfully rich, is just one perspective on the vast acoustic landscape that surrounds us. Within our hearing range, our sensitivity is not uniform, but follows a curious pattern that reflects both the physics of sound transmission and the evolutionary pressures that shaped our auditory system, with our greatest sensitivity occurring in the frequency range between 1000 and 4000 Hz, precisely the range that contains the most important information for understanding human speech. And it is no coincidence that this peak sensitivity aligns so perfectly with the fundamental frequencies of human vowels and the critical consonants that give speech its clarity and meaning. For our hearing has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to excel at the task of human communication, allowing us to detect the subtle acoustic cues that distinguish one word from another, one voice from another, one emotion from another. As we age, this remarkable auditory range gradually contracts, beginning with the highest frequencies and slowly working its way down the spectrum, so that the sparkling highs of youth give way to a more muted palette of middle frequencies, and this age-related hearing loss, known as presbycusis, affects virtually everyone to some degree, stealing away first the ability to hear the delicate harmonics that give music its brilliance and speech its crispness, then gradually eroding the mid-range frequencies that carry so much of the information we need for communication, until eventually, even the powerful low frequencies that once seemed so permanent begin to fade, leaving behind a diminished but still precious connection to the world of sound. Yet even as aging narrows our auditory window, individual variations in hearing ability remind us that no two ears are exactly alike. For some people are blessed with extraordinarily acute hearing, able to detect sounds so faint they approach the theoretical limits of biological sensitivity, while others struggle with congenital hearing differences that shape their entire relationship with the acoustic world. And between these extremes lies a vast spectrum of hearing abilities, each person carrying their own unique auditory fingerprint, their own particular pattern of sensitivity and limitation, their own special relationship with the frequencies that surround us. And these individual differences, far from being mere curiosities, remind us that hearing is not just a mechanical process but a deeply personal experience, shaped by genetics, environment, experience, and the countless factors that make each human being unique. And even in the face of hearing loss or limitation, the human brain's remarkable ability to adapt and compensate ensures that the wonder of auditory perception continues, finding new ways to extract meaning from whatever signals remain, creating new strategies for navigating the acoustic world, and maintaining that precious connection to the sounds that give life its richness and meaning. In the theater of human hearing, one of the most extraordinary performances occurs not in the detection of sound itself, but in the brain's ability to locate that sound in the three-dimensional space around us, transforming the simple act of hearing into a sophisticated navigation system that allows us to pinpoint the location of a speaking voice in a crowded room, to duck when we hear something flying overhead, to turn our heads toward an approaching car, and to create a detailed mental map of our acoustic environment that rivals the precision of the most advanced radar systems. And this remarkable feat is accomplished through the coordinated action of our two ears working together as a single, integrated system, each ear serving as one half of a biological stereo array that samples the acoustic environment from slightly different positions, creating tiny but crucial differences in the sounds that reach each ear. Differences so small they would seem insignificant to our conscious minds, but so meaningful to our auditory processing centers that they can pinpoint the location of a sound source to within just a few degrees of accuracy. The primary cues that our brain uses for sound localization are the intraoral time differences and interaural level differences, subtle variations in when and how loudly sounds arrive at each ear. And these differences, though measured in microseconds and fractions of decibels, contain within them a complete map of auditory space, with sounds coming from the right side of our body reaching the right ear, slightly before the left ear, and with slightly greater intensity, while sounds from the left create the opposite pattern, and sounds directly in front of or behind us create equal signals at both ears, though the front-back distinction requires additional cues from the subtle filtering effects of our outer ears, which modify the spectral content of sounds in ways that provide crucial information about their vertical location and their position relative to our head. For low-frequency sounds, the brain relies primarily on timing differences, comparing the phase relationships of the sound waves at the two ears with extraordinary precision, detecting timing differences as small as 10 microseconds, which corresponds to a sound source location difference of just a few degrees. And this temporal processing occurs in the superior olivary complex of the brainstem, where specialized neurons act as biological coincidence detectors, firing maximally when sounds arrive at both ears simultaneously and creating a neural map of auditory space. Based on the systematic variation in timing across different sound locations, for high-frequency sounds, where the wavelengths become too short for a reliable phase comparison, the brain switches to using intensity differences, taking advantage of the acoustic shadow cast by our head, which blocks some of the sound energy from reaching the far ear, creating level differences that can be as small as a few decibels but are sufficient to indicate the direction of the sound source. And this intensity-based localization system complements the timing-based system, together providing accurate localization across the entire frequency range of human hearing. Yet despite the sophistication of this binaural system, there exists a curious phenomenon known as the cone of confusion, a set of locations in space where sounds create identical timing and intensity differences at the two ears, making it impossible to determine their exact location based on binaural cues alone. And these ambiguous locations form cone-shaped regions extending outward from each ear, within which sounds are localized poorly or incorrectly. But evolution has provided us with an elegant solution to this problem in the form of head movements, for when we turn our heads even slightly, we change the geometric relationship between our ears and the sound source, transforming the ambiguous acoustic cues into clear directional information. And this is why we instinctively turn our heads when we hear an unfamiliar sound, not just to bring our ears closer to the source, but to resolve the acoustic ambiguity and pinpoint its exact location. And through this dynamic interaction between our binaural processing system and our natural tendency to move our heads, we create a robust and accurate method for navigating the acoustic landscape that surrounds us, turning the simple act of hearing into a sophisticated spatial awareness system that connects us intimately with the three-dimensional world of sound. The human ear is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, capable of detecting sounds across a frequency range that spans from the deep, rumbling bass notes at 20 Hz, vibrations so low they're felt as much as heard, all the way up to the crystalline highs of 20 Hz, frequencies so sharp they seem to sparkle in the air. And within this remarkable 10-octave range lies the entire universe of human auditory experience. From the thunderous roar of a waterfall to the delicate whisper of leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, from the bone-shaking bass of a pipe organ to the ethereal harmonics of a piccolo, and yet this range, impressive as it may seem, represents only a tiny slice of the acoustic spectrum that exists in nature. For elephants communicate using infrasonic calls below our hearing threshold, while dolphins and bats navigate their worlds using ultrasonic frequencies far above our perception, reminding us that our auditory window, though wonderfully rich, is just one perspective on the vast acoustic landscape that surrounds us. Within our hearing range, our sensitivity is not uniform but follows a curious pattern that reflects both the physics of sound transmission and the evolutionary pressures that shaped our auditory system, with our greatest sensitivity occurring in the frequency range between 10 and 4000 Hz, precisely the range that contains the most important information for understanding human speech. And it is no coincidence that this peak sensitivity aligns so perfectly with the fundamental frequencies of human vowels and the critical consonants that give speech its clarity and meaning. For our hearing has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to excel at the task of human communication, allowing us to detect the subtle acoustic cues that distinguish one word from another, one voice from another, one emotion from another. As we age, this remarkable auditory range gradually contracts, beginning with the highest frequencies and slowly working its way down the spectrum, so that the sparkling highs of youth give way to a more muted palette of middle frequencies. And this age-related hearing loss, known as presbycusis, affects virtually everyone to some degree, stealing away first the ability to hear the delicate harmonics that give music its brilliance and speech its crispness, then gradually eroding the mid-range frequencies that carry so much of the information we need for communication, until eventually even the powerful low frequencies that once seemed so permanent begin to fade, leaving behind a diminished but still precious connection to the world of sound. Yet even as aging narrows our auditory window, individual variations in hearing ability remind us that no two ears are exactly alike. For some people are blessed with extraordinarily acute hearing, able to detect sounds so faint they approach the theoretical limits of biological sensitivity, while others struggle with congenital hearing differences that shape their entire relationship with the acoustic world. And between these extremes lies a vast spectrum of hearing abilities, each person carrying their own unique auditory fingerprint, their own particular pattern of sensitivity and limitation, their own special relationship with the frequencies that surround us. And these individual differences, far from being mere curiosities, remind us that hearing is not just a mechanical process but a deeply personal experience, shaped by genetics, environment, experience, and the countless factors that make each human being unique. And even in the face of hearing loss or limitation, the human brain's remarkable ability to adapt and compensate ensures that the wonder of auditory perception continues, finding new ways to extract meaning from whatever signals remain, creating new strategies for navigating the acoustic world, and maintaining that precious connection to the sounds that give life its richness and meaning. In the grand symphony of human auditory experience, perhaps no achievements are more remarkable than our ability to understand speech and perceive music, two uniquely human capabilities that transform the raw acoustic information detected by our ears into the rich tapestry of communication, emotion, and meaning that defines so much of our lived experience. And these abilities require not just the detection of sound but the sophisticated analysis of complex acoustic patterns, the separation of meaningful signals from background noise, and the integration of auditory information with memory, emotion, and cognition in ways that continue to amaze scientists and inspire artists. The challenge of understanding speech in the real world is exemplified by what psychologists call the cocktail party effect. That remarkable ability to focus on a single voice in a crowded, noisy environment, filtering out the dozens of other conversations, the clinking of glasses, the background music, and all the other acoustic distractions that fill a social gathering. And this feat, which we perform effortlessly dozens of times each day, requires the coordinated action of multiple brain systems working together to separate the acoustic mixture into its individual components, identifying which sounds belong to the voice we want to hear and which can be safely ignored. And this auditory scene analysis involves not just the acoustic properties of the sounds themselves, but also our visual attention, our prior knowledge of the speaker, our expectations about what they might say, and even our emotional connection to the person who is speaking. The brain accomplishes this separation through a combination of bottom-up processing, where the acoustic features of different voices are analyzed and compared, and top-down processing, where our attention and expectations shape what we hear, emphasizing the voice we want to focus on while suppressing the others. And this dynamic interaction between sensation and cognition allows us to extract meaningful speech from even the most challenging acoustic environments, though the effort required increases dramatically as the background noise level rises, eventually reaching a point where even our remarkable speech processing system can no longer maintain the separation between signal and noise. Music perception represents another extraordinary achievement of human auditory processing. For music, unlike speech, conveys meaning not through the semantic content of words, but through the abstract relationships between sounds, the patterns of melody, harmony, and rhythm that somehow speak directly to our emotions, creating responses that can range from the gentle melancholy of a minor key ballad to the triumphant joy of a major key anthem. And these emotional responses to music appear to be universal across cultures, suggesting that our brains are somehow hardwired to find meaning in musical patterns, to respond to the mathematical relationships between frequencies that we perceive as consonance and dissonance, to feel the forward momentum of rhythm and the resolution of harmonic tension. The processing of music involves multiple brain areas working in concert, from the primary auditory cortex that analyzes the basic acoustic features to the limbic system that generates emotional responses, from the motor areas that make us want to move to the rhythm to the memory systems that allow us to recognize familiar melodies and recall the circumstances in which we first heard them. And this distributed processing creates the rich, multifaceted, the experience of music that encompasses not just the sounds themselves, but their emotional significance, their cultural meaning, and their personal associations, transforming simple patterns of acoustic energy into some of the most powerful and moving experiences in human life. And it is through this remarkable integration of auditory processing, cognitive analysis, and emotional response that our ears and brains together create the miracle of human communication and artistic expression, turning the vibrations of air molecules into the words that connect us with others and the music that touches our souls. The human ear is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, capable of detecting sounds across a frequency range that spans from the deep, rumbling bass notes at 20 Hz, vibrations so low they're felt as much as heard, all the way up to the crystalline highs of 20 Hz, frequencies so sharp they seem to sparkle in the air. And within this remarkable tone-octave range lies the entire universe of human auditory experience. From the thunderous roar of a waterfall to the delicate whisper of leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, from the bone-shaking bass of a pipe organ to the ethereal harmonics of a piccolo, and yet this range, impressive as it may seem, represents only a tiny slice of the acoustic spectrum that exists in nature. For elephants communicate using infrasonic calls below our hearing threshold, while dolphins and bats navigate their worlds using ultrasonic frequencies far above our perception, reminding us that our auditory window, though wonderfully rich, is just one perspective on the vast acoustic landscape that surrounds us. Within our hearing range, our sensitivity is not uniform but follows a curious pattern that reflects both the physics of sound transmission and the evolutionary pressures that shaped our auditory system, with our greatest sensitivity occurring in the frequency range between 10 and 4000 Hz, precisely the range that contains the most important information for understanding human speech. And it is no coincidence that this peak sensitivity aligns so perfectly with the fundamental frequencies of human vowels and the critical consonants that give speech its clarity and meaning. For our hearing has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to excel at the task of human communication, allowing us to detect the subtle acoustic cues that distinguish one word from another, one voice from another, one emotion from another. As we age, this remarkable auditory range gradually contracts, beginning with the highest frequencies and slowly working its way down the spectrum, so that the sparkling highs of youth give way to a more muted palette of middle frequencies. And this age-related hearing loss, known as presbycusis, affects virtually everyone to some degree, stealing away first the ability to hear the delicate harmonics that give music its brilliance and speech its crispness, then gradually eroding the mid-range frequencies that carry so much of the information we need for communication, until eventually even the powerful low frequencies that once seemed so permanent begin to fade, leaving behind a diminished but still precious connection to the world of sound. Yet even as aging narrows our auditory window, individual variations in hearing ability remind us that no two ears are exactly alike. For some people are blessed with extraordinarily acute hearing, able to detect sounds so faint they approach the theoretical limits of biological sensitivity, while others struggle with congenital hearing differences that shape their entire relationship with the acoustic world. And between these extremes lies a vast spectrum of hearing abilities, each person carrying their own unique auditory fingerprint, their own particular pattern of sensitivity and limitation, their own special relationship with the frequencies that surround us. And these individual differences, far from being mere curiosities, remind us that hearing is not just a mechanical process but a deeply personal experience, shaped by genetics, environment, experience, and the countless factors that make each human being unique. And even in the face of hearing loss or limitation, the human brain's remarkable ability to adapt and compensate ensures that the wonder of auditory perception continues, finding new ways to extract meaning from whatever signals remain, creating new strategies for navigating the acoustic world, and maintaining that precious connection to the sounds that give life its richness and meaning. In the grand symphony of human auditory experience, perhaps no achievements are more remarkable than our ability to understand speech and perceive music, two uniquely human capabilities that transform the raw acoustic information detected by our ears into the rich tapestry of communication, emotion, and meaning that defines so much of our lived experience. And these abilities require not just the detection of sound but the sophisticated analysis of complex acoustic patterns, the separation of meaningful signals from background noise, and the integration of auditory information with memory, emotion, and cognition in ways that continue to amaze scientists and inspire artists. The challenge of understanding speech in the real world is exemplified by what psychologists call the cocktail party effect. That remarkable ability to focus on a single voice in a crowded, noisy environment, filtering out the dozens of other conversations, the clinking of glasses, the background music, and all the other acoustic distractions that fill a social gathering. And this feat, which we perform effortlessly dozens of times each day, requires the coordinated action of multiple brain systems working together to separate the acoustic mixture into its individual components, identifying which sounds belong to the voice we want to hear and which can be safely ignored. And this auditory scene analysis involves not just the acoustic properties of the sounds themselves but also our visual attention, our prior knowledge of the speaker, our expectations about what they might say, and even our emotional connection to the person who is speaking. The brain accomplishes this separation through a combination of bottom-up processing, where the acoustic features of different voices are analyzed and compared, and top-down processing, where our attention and expectations shape what we hear, emphasizing the voice we want to focus on while suppressing the others. And this dynamic interaction between sensation and cognition allows us to extract meaningful speech from even the most challenging acoustic environments, though the effort required increases dramatically as the background noise level rises, eventually reaching a point where even our remarkable speech processing system can no longer maintain the separation between signal and noise. Music perception represents another extraordinary achievement of human auditory processing. For music, unlike speech, conveys meaning not through the semantic content of words, but through the abstract relationships between sounds, the patterns of melody, harmony, and rhythm that somehow speak directly to our emotions, creating responses that can range from the gentle melancholy of a minor key ballad to the triumphant joy of a major key anthem. And these emotional responses to music appear to be universal across cultures, suggesting that our brains are somehow hardwired to find meaning in musical patterns, to respond to the mathematical relationships between frequencies that we perceive as consonance and dissonance, to feel the forward momentum of rhythm and the resolution of harmonic tension. The processing of music involves multiple brain areas working in concert, from the primary auditory cortex that analyzes the basic acoustic features to the limbic system that generates emotional responses, from the motor areas that make us want to move to the rhythm to the memory systems that allow us to recognize familiar melodies and recall the circumstances in which we first heard them. And this distributed processing creates the rich, multifaceted, the experience of music that encompasses not just the sounds themselves, but their emotional significance, their cultural meaning, and their personal associations, transforming simple patterns of acoustic energy into some of the most powerful and moving experiences in human life. And it is through this remarkable integration of auditory processing, cognitive analysis, and emotional response that our ears and brains together create the miracle of human communication and artistic expression, turning the vibrations of air molecules into the words that connect us with others and the music that touches our souls. The human ear is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, capable of detecting sounds across a frequency range that spans from the deep, rumbling bass notes at 20 Hz, vibrations so low they're felt as much as heard, all the way up to the crystalline highs of 20,000 Hz, frequencies so sharp they seem to sparkle in the air. And within this remarkable tonoctave range lies the entire universe of human auditory experience, from the thunderous roar of a waterfall to the delicate whisper of leaves rustling in a gentle breeze, from the bone-shaking bass of a pipe organ to the ethereal harmonics of a piccolo. And yet this range, impressive as it may seem, represents only a tiny slice of the acoustic spectrum that exists in nature, for elephants communicate using infrasonic calls below our hearing threshold, while dolphins and bats navigate their worlds using ultrasonic frequencies far above our perception, reminding us that our auditory window, though wonderfully rich, is just one perspective on the vast acoustic landscape that surrounds us. Within our hearing range, our sensitivity is not uniform but follows a curious pattern that reflects both the physics of sound transmission and the evolutionary pressures that shaped our auditory system, with our greatest sensitivity occurring in the frequency range between 1000 and 4000 Hz, precisely the range that contains the most important information for understanding human speech. And it is no coincidence that this peak sensitivity aligns so perfectly with the fundamental frequencies of human vowels and the critical consonants that give speech its clarity and meaning. For our hearing has been fine-tuned by millions of years of evolution to excel at the task of human communication, allowing us to detect the subtle acoustic cues that distinguish one word from another, one voice from another, one emotion from another. As we age, this remarkable auditory range gradually contracts, beginning with the highest frequencies and slowly working its way down the spectrum, so that the sparkling highs of youth give way to a more muted palette of middle frequencies, and this age-related hearing loss, known as presbycusis, affects virtually everyone to some degree, stealing away first the ability to hear the delicate harmonics that give music its brilliance and speech its crispness, then gradually eroding the mid-range frequencies that carry so much of the information we need for communication, until eventually, even the powerful low frequencies that once seemed so permanent begin to fade, leaving behind a diminished but still precious connection to the world of sound. Yet even as aging narrows our auditory window, individual variations in hearing ability remind us that no two ears are exactly alike. For some people are blessed with extraordinarily acute hearing, able to detect sounds so faint they approach the theoretical limits of biological sensitivity, while others struggle with congenital hearing differences that shape their entire relationship with the acoustic world. And between these extremes lies a vast spectrum of hearing abilities, each person carrying their own unique auditory fingerprint, their own particular pattern of sensitivity and limitation, their own special relationship with the frequencies that surround us. And these individual differences, far from being mere curiosities, remind us that hearing is not just a mechanical process but a deeply personal experience, shaped by genetics, environment, experience, and the countless factors that make each human being unique. And even in the face of hearing loss or limitation, the human brain's remarkable ability to adapt and compensate ensures that the wonder of auditory perception continues, finding new ways to extract meaning from whatever signals remain, creating new strategies for navigating the acoustic world, and maintaining that precious connection to the sounds that give life its richness and meaning. Hearing loss affects millions of people worldwide, but not all hearing problems are the same. Understanding the different types helps us appreciate both the complexity of our auditory system and the various ways it can be affected. The two main categories of hearing loss are conductive and sensory neural. Conductive hearing loss occurs when sound waves cannot properly reach the inner ear. This might happen due to earwax buildup, fluid in the middle ear, or problems with the tiny bones that transmit vibrations. Think of it like trying to hear through a thick wall. The sound is there, but something is blocking its path. The good news is that conductive hearing loss is often treatable or even reversible. Since hearing loss, on the other hand, involves damage to the inner ear or the auditory nerve pathways to the brain. This type is more complex because it affects how sound signals are converted into electrical messages or how those messages travel to the brain. Common causes include aging, exposure to loud noises, certain medications, and genetic factors. Unfortunately, sensorineural hearing loss is typically permanent, though hearing aids and other technologies can often help. Imagine hearing a constant ringing, buzzing, or hissing sound that no one else can hear. This phantom sound is called tinnitus, and it affects nearly 50 million Americans to some degree. For many people, tinnitus is a temporary annoyance, but for others, it becomes a persistent companion that significantly impacts their quality of life. Tinnitus isn't actually a disease itself, but rather a symptom of an underlying condition affecting the auditory system. The phantom sounds can take many forms: ringing, buzzing, humming, clicking, roaring, or even musical tones. Some people hear one consistent sound, while others experience multiple sounds, or sounds that change in pitch and intensity. The causes of tinnitus are diverse and sometimes mysterious. Damage to the tiny hair cells in the inner ear is a common culprit, often resulting from exposure to loud noises, aging, or certain medications. When these hair cells are damaged, they may send random electrical signals to the brain, which interprets them as sound. Earwax buildup, middle ear infections, and even stress can trigger tinnitus episodes. There are two main types of tinnitus: subjective and objective. Subjective tinnitus, which accounts for about 95% of cases, can only be heard by the person experiencing it. Objective tinnitus is much rarer and can actually be heard by a healthcare provider during examination, usually caused by blood vessel problems or muscle contractions near the ear. While there's no universal cure for tinnitus, many effective management strategies exist. Sound therapy uses external sounds to mask or partially cover the tinnitus, providing relief and helping the brain learn to ignore the phantom sounds. White noise machines, hearing aids, and specialized tinnitus maskers can all be helpful tools. Cognitive behavioral therapy has shown remarkable success in helping people change their emotional response to tinnitus. By learning to view tinnitus as a neutral rather than threatening sound, many people find their distress significantly reduced. Relaxation techniques, meditation, and stress management also play important roles in tinnitus management. Lifestyle modifications can make a substantial difference. Avoiding caffeine, alcohol, and smoking may reduce tinnitus intensity for some people. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, and stress reduction contribute to overall well-being and can indirectly help with tinnitus management. The key to living well with tinnitus is understanding that while the sound may persist, your reaction to it can change, leading to improved quality of life and peace of mind. Modern hearing technology represents one of medicine's greatest success stories, transforming millions of lives by restoring connection to the world of sound. From the first crude ear trumpets to today's sophisticated digital devices, hearing assistance technology continues to evolve at a remarkable pace. Traditional hearing aids work by amplifying sound waves, making them louder and clearer for damaged ears. Modern digital hearing aids are essentially tiny computers that can distinguish between different types of sounds, reduce background noise, and adjust automatically to various environments. They can connect wirelessly to phones, televisions, and other devices, creating a seamless listening experience. Today's hearing aids come in various styles, from nearly invisible devices that fit completely in the ear, canal to behind-the-ear models that offer more power and features. Advanced features include directional microphones that focus on speech while reducing background noise, feedback cancellation systems that eliminate whistling sounds, and smartphone apps that allow users to adjust settings discreetly. Implants represent a revolutionary leap in hearing technology. Unlike hearing aids that amplify sound, cochlear implants bypass damaged hair cells entirely and directly stimulate the auditory nerve. The device consists of an external processor worn behind the ear and an internal receiver surgically implanted. Under the skin, the processor converts sound into electrical signals that are transmitted to electrodes placed in the cochlea. The success of cochlear implants has been remarkable, particularly for children born with severe hearing loss. Many recipients develop excellent speech, understanding, and can even enjoy music. The technology works best when implanted early in life, as the brain's plasticity allows it to adapt more readily to the artificial signals. Recent innovations include bionic hearing aids for people with conductive hearing loss or single-sided deafness. These devices bypass the outer and middle ear by transmitting sound vibrations directly through the skull bone to the inner ear. The evolution continues with smart hearing aids that use artificial intelligence to learn user preferences and automatically adjust to different environments. Some experimental devices can translate foreign languages in real time or provide audio descriptions of visual scenes. Success stories abound, from children hearing their parents' voices for the first time to adults returning to their careers after sudden hearing loss. However, realistic expectations are important. While technology can significantly improve hearing, it rarely restores it to normal levels. The future promises even more exciting developments, including invisible implants, improved sound processing, and better integration with smart devices. Hearing loss affects millions of people worldwide, but not all hearing problems are the same. Understanding the different types helps us appreciate both the complexity of our auditory system and the various ways it can be affected. The two main categories of hearing loss are conductive and central. Conductive hearing loss occurs when sound waves cannot properly reach the inner ear. This might happen due to earwax buildup, fluid in the middle ear, or problems with the tiny bones that transmit vibrations. Think of it like trying to hear through a thick wall. The sound is there, but something is blocking its path. The good news is that conductive hearing loss is often treatable or even reversible. Sensory hearing loss, on the other hand, involves damage to the inner ear or the auditory nerve pathways to the brain. This type is more complex because it affects how sound signals are converted into electrical messages or how those messages travel to the brain. Common causes include aging, exposure to loud noises, certain medications, and genetic factors. Unfortunately, sensorineural hearing loss is typically permanent, though hearing aids and other technologies can often help. Imagine hearing a constant ringing, buzzing, or hissing sound that no one else can hear. This phantom sound is called tinnitus, and it affects nearly 50 million Americans to some degree. For many people, tinnitus is a temporary annoyance, but for others, it becomes a persistent companion that significantly impacts their quality of life. Tinnitus isn't actually a disease itself, but rather a symptom of an underlying condition affecting the auditory system. The phantom sounds can take many forms: ringing, buzzing, humming, clicking, roaring, or even musical tones. Some people hear one consistent sound, while others experience multiple sounds, or sounds that change in pitch and intensity. The causes of tinnitus are diverse and sometimes mysterious. Damage to the tiny hair cells in the inner ear is a common culprit, often resulting from exposure to loud noises, aging, or certain medications. When these hair cells are damaged, they may send random electrical signals to the brain, which interprets them as sound. Earwax buildup, middle ear infections, and even stress can trigger tinnitus episodes. There are two main types of tinnitus: subjective and objective. Subjective tinnitus, which accounts for about 95% of cases, can only be heard by the person experiencing it. Your hearing is irreplaceable, making protection one of the most important investments you can make in your long-term health and quality of life. Unlike some other senses, hearing damage is often permanent, but the encouraging news is that much of it is entirely preventable with proper knowledge and habits. Noise-induced hearing loss is one of the most common and completely preventable forms of hearing damage. It occurs when loud sounds damage the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. These microscopic sensors, once destroyed, cannot regenerate in humans. The damage is cumulative, meaning that repeated exposure to moderately loud sounds can be just as harmful as occasional exposure to extremely loud sounds. Understanding safe sound levels is crucial for protection. Normal conversation occurs at about 60 decibels, which is completely safe for extended periods. However, sounds above 85 decibels can cause damage with prolonged exposure. A lawnmower produces about 90 decibels, Rock concerts can reach 115 decibels, and gunshots can exceed 140 decibels. The louder the sound, the less time it takes to cause permanent damage. The 60/60th rule is a helpful guideline for personal listening devices. Listen at no more than 60% of maximum volume for no more than 60 minutes at a time. Modern hearing technology represents one of medicine's greatest success stories, transforming millions of lives by restoring connection to the world of sound. From the first crude ear trumpets to today's sophisticated digital devices, hearing assistance technology continues to evolve at a remarkable pace. Traditional hearing aids work by amplifying sound waves, making them louder and clearer for damaged ears. Modern digital hearing aids are essentially tiny computers that can distinguish between different types of sounds, reduce background noise, and adjust automatically to various environments. They can connect wirelessly to phones, televisions, and other devices, creating a seamless listening experience. Today's hearing aids come in various styles, from nearly invisible devices that fit completely in the ear, to behind-the-ear models that offer more power and features. Advanced features include directional microphones that focus on speech while reducing background noise, feedback cancellation systems that eliminate whistling sounds, and smartphone apps that allow users to adjust settings discreetly. Implants represent a revolutionary leap in hearing technology. Unlike hearing aids that amplify sound, cochlear implants bypass damaged hair cells entirely and directly stimulate the auditory nerve. The device consists of an external processor, worn behind the ear, and an internal receiver surgically implanted under the skin. The processor converts sound into electrical signals that are transmitted to electrodes placed in the cochlea. Modern hearing technology represents one of medicine's greatest success stories, transforming millions of lives by restoring connection to the world of sound. From the first crude ear trumpets to today's sophisticated digital devices, hearing assistance technology continues to evolve at a remarkable pace. Traditional hearing aids work by amplifying sound waves, making them louder and clearer for damaged ears. Modern digital hearing aids are essentially tiny computers that can distinguish between different types of sounds, reduce background noise, and adjust automatically to various environments. They can connect wirelessly to phones, televisions, and other devices, creating a seamless list. The frontier of hearing science buzzes with exciting discoveries that could revolutionize how we understand and treat hearing loss. Researchers around the world are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, offering hope to millions of people with hearing difficulties. Hair cell regeneration research represents perhaps the most promising avenue for treating sensorineural hearing loss. Unlike birds and fish, which can regenerate damaged hair cells throughout their lives, mammals lose this ability during development. Scientists have identified the genetic switches that control hair cell regeneration and are working to reactivate them in adult mammals. Recent breakthroughs include the discovery of supporting cells in the inner ear that can be coaxed to transform into new hair cells. Researchers have successfully regenerated hair cells in laboratory dishes and in animal models using various techniques, including gene therapy, stem cell therapy, and small molecule drugs. While human trials are still in early stages, the results are encouraging. Gene therapy offers another exciting approach to treating inherited hearing loss. Scientists have identified over 100 genes associated with hearing loss and are developing ways to correct these genetic defects. In animal studies, gene therapy has successfully restored hearing in mice with genetic hearing loss, sometimes within weeks of treatment. CRISPR gene editing technology has opened new possibilities for precisely correcting genetic mutations that cause hearing loss. Researchers have used CRISPR to prevent hearing loss in mouse models of genetic deafness, suggesting this approach might work in humans with similar conditions. Brain-computer interfaces represent a futuristic but increasingly realistic approach to hearing restoration. These devices could bypass the entire ear and directly stimulate the auditory cortex in the brain. Early research has shown that direct brain stimulation can create the perception of sound. Though current technology produces only simple sounds, artificial intelligence is transforming hearing aid technology, enabling devices to learn from user behavior and automatically adjust to different environments. Machine learning algorithms can distinguish between speech and noise more effectively than traditional methods, improving the listening experience in challenging situations. a technique that uses light to control genetically modified neurons, offers another potential avenue for hearing restoration. Researchers have successfully restored some hearing in deaf mice by introducing light-sensitive proteins into auditory neurons and then stimulating them with implanted light sources. Nanotechnology is being explored for targeted drug delivery to the inner ear, potentially allowing for more effective treatments with fewer side effects. Nanoparticles can be designed to release drugs slowly over time or to target specific cell types within the ear. These cutting-edge research areas represent hope for future generations and demonstrate the incredible ingenuity of human scientific endeavor. Hearing loss affects millions of people worldwide, but not all hearing problems are the same. Understanding the different types helps us appreciate both the complexity of our auditory system and the various ways it can be affected. The two main categories of hearing loss are conductive and sensorineural. Conductive hearing loss occurs when sound waves cannot properly reach the inner ear. This might happen due to earwax buildup, fluid in the middle ear, or problems with the tiny bones that transmit vibrations. Think of it like trying to hear through a thick wall. The sound is there, but something is blocking its path. The good news is that conductive hearing loss is often treatable or even reversible. Hearing loss, on the other hand, involves damage to the inner ear or the auditory nerve pathways to the brain. This type is more complex because it affects how sound signals are converted into electrical messages or how those messages travel to the brain. Common causes include aging, exposure to loud noises, certain medications, and genetic factors. Unfortunately, sensorineural hearing loss is typically permanent, though hearing aids and other technologies can often help. Imagine hearing a constant ringing, buzzing, or hissing sound that no one else can hear. This phantom sound is called tinnitus, and it affects nearly 50 million Americans to some degree. For many people, tinnitus is a temporary annoyance, but for others, it becomes a persistent companion that significantly impacts their quality of life. Tinnitus isn't actually a disease itself, but rather a symptom of an underlying condition affecting the auditory system. The phantom sounds can take many forms: ringing, buzzing, humming, clicking, roaring, or even musical tones. Some people hear one consistent sound, while others experience multiple sounds, or sounds that change in pitch and intensity. The causes of tinnitus are diverse and sometimes mysterious. Damage to the tiny hair cells in the inner ear is a common culprit, often resulting from exposure to loud noises, aging, or certain medications. When these hair cells are damaged, they may send random electrical signals to the brain, which interprets them as sound. Earwax buildup, middle ear infections, and even stress can trigger tinnitus episodes. There are two main types of tinnitus: subjective and objective. Subjective tinnitus, which accounts for about 95% of cases, can only be heard by the person experiencing it. Your hearing is irreplaceable, making protection one of the most important investments you can make in your long-term health and quality of life. Unlike some other senses, hearing damage is often permanent, but the encouraging news is that much of it is entirely preventable with proper knowledge and habits. Noise-induced hearing loss is one of the most common and completely preventable forms of hearing damage. It occurs when loud sounds damage the delicate hair cells in your inner ear. These microscopic sensors, once destroyed, cannot regenerate in humans. The damage is cumulative, meaning that repeated exposure to moderately loud sounds can be just as harmful as occasional exposure to extremely loud sounds. Understanding safe sound levels is crucial for protection. Normal conversation occurs at about 60 decibels, which is completely safe for extended periods. However, sounds above 85 decibels can cause damage with prolonged exposure. A lawnmower produces about 90 decibels, rock concerts can reach 115 decibels, and gunshots can exceed 140 decibel. The louder the sound, the less time it takes to cause permanent damage. The 60/60th rule is a helpful guideline for personal listening devices. Listen at no more than 60% of maximum volume for no more than 60 minutes at a time. The frontier of hearing. Science buzzes with exciting discoveries that could revolutionize how we understand and treat hearing loss. Researchers around the world are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, offering hope to millions of people with hearing difficulties. Hair cell regeneration research represents perhaps the most promising avenue for treating sensorineural hearing loss. Unlike birds and fish, which can regenerate damaged hair cells throughout their lives, Mammals lose this ability during development. Scientists have identified the genetic switches that control hair cell regeneration and are working to reactivate them in adult mammals. Recent breakthroughs include the discovery of supporting cells in the inner ear that can be coaxed to transform into new hair cells. Researchers have successfully regenerated hair cells in laboratory dishes and in animal models using various techniques, including gene therapy, stem cell therapy, and small molecule drugs. While human trials are still in early stages, the results are encouraging. Gene therapy offers another exciting approach to treating inherited hearing loss. Scientists have identified over 100 genes associated with hearing loss and are developing ways to correct these genetic defects. In animal studies, gene therapy has successfully restored hearing in mice with genetic hearing loss, sometimes within weeks of treatment. CRISPR, gene editing technology, has opened new possibilities for precisely correcting genetic mutations that cause hearing loss. Researchers have used CRISPR to prevent hearing loss in mouse models of genetic deafness, suggesting this approach might work in humans with similar conditions. Brain-computer interfaces represent a futuristic but increasingly realistic approach to hearing restoration. Hearing loss doesn't exist in isolation. It profoundly affects how people connect with others, participate in society, and navigate the world around them. Understanding the social dimensions of hearing reveals the full scope of its impact on human life and highlights the importance of inclusive communities. Deaf culture represents a vibrant, rich community with its own language, customs, and identity. Many deaf individuals don't view their condition as a disability requiring fixing, but rather as a different way of experiencing and interacting with the world. This perspective challenges common assumptions about hearing loss and emphasizes the value of linguistic and cultural diversity. Sign language exemplifies the remarkable adaptability of human communication. American Sign Language (ASL) is a complete, complex language with its own grammar, syntax, and cultural expressions. It's not simply English translated into gestures, but a distinct language that can express everything spoken languages can, often with greater visual richness and spatial complexity. The deaf community has developed sophisticated visual communication strategies that extend beyond formal sign language. Deaf individuals often excel at reading facial expressions, body language, and other visual cues that hearing people might miss. This heightened visual awareness demonstrates how the brain can compensate for one sensory loss by enhancing others. Communication barriers can significantly impact education, employment, and social relationships for people with hearing loss. In educational settings, students with hearing difficulties may struggle to follow lectures, participate in discussions, or catch subtle nuances in communication. These challenges can affect academic performance and career opportunities if not properly addressed. The workplace presents unique challenges and opportunities for people with hearing loss. Many jobs are perfectly suited to deaf or hard of hearing individuals, and these employees often bring valuable perspectives and skills. However, communication barriers, misconceptions, and lack of accommodation can create unnecessary obstacles. Technology has dramatically improved accessibility for people with hearing loss. Closed captioning, video relay services, and smartphone apps that convert speech to text have opened new possibilities for communication and participation. Hearing loops in public spaces, visual alert systems, and vibrating notification devices help create more inclusive environments. The Americans with Disabilities Act and similar legislation worldwide have mandated reasonable accommodations for people with hearing loss, including interpreters, assistive listening devices, and accessible communication technologies. These legal protections have significantly improved access to education, employment, and public services. Social inclusion requires awareness and effort from entire communities. Simple changes like facing someone when speaking clearly without exaggerating, and learning basic sign language can make enormous differences in creating welcoming environments for people with hearing loss. The social impact of hearing extends far beyond individual medical conditions. It touches fundamental questions about communication, community, and human connection. The animal kingdom showcases hearing abilities that make human audition seem modest by comparison. From echolocation to infrasound detection, animals have evolved remarkable auditory superpowers that allow them to navigate, hunt, communicate, and survive in ways that continue to amaze scientists. Echolocation represents perhaps the most sophisticated biological sonar system imaginable. Bats and dolphins have independently evolved this incredible ability, using sound waves to create detailed mental maps of their surroundings. Bats emit high-frequency calls, often beyond human hearing range, and interpret the returning echoes to locate objects as small as mosquitoes in complete darkness. Different bat species have developed various echolocation strategies. Some use constant frequency calls that work like radar, while others use frequency-modulated sweeps that provide detailed information about texture and shape. The precision is astounding. Bats can distinguish between objects that differ by just a few millimeters, and can even determine if a target is edible or inedible, based on echo characteristics. Dolphins take echolocation to even greater heights, using their complex sound production system to see inside objects. They can detect air-filled swim bladders inside fish, identify buried objects in sand, and even peer inside other dolphins' bodies. Some researchers believe dolphins can echolocate so precisely they can detect each other's emotional states through internal body changes. Elephants communicate using infrasound, frequencies below human hearing range. These low calls can travel for miles, allowing elephant herds to coordinate movements across vast distances. Elephants can detect these calls through both their ears and their feet, feeling vibrations traveling through the ground. Many animals hear frequencies far beyond human range. Dogs hear up to about 45,000 Hz. Humans hear up to about 20,000 Hz, which is why dog whistles work. Cats hear even higher frequencies, up to 64,000 Hz, helping them detect the ultrasonic calls of rodents. Moths have evolved ears specifically tuned to bat echolocation calls, engaging in an evolutionary arms race of detection and evasion. Some animals have directional hearing that surpasses human abilities. Owls have asymmetrically placed ears that create tiny time differences in sound arrival, allowing them to pinpoint prey location with incredible accuracy. Their facial discs act like satellite dishes, focusing sound waves toward their ears. Certain fish can detect the electrical fields generated by other animals' muscles, essentially hearing the bioelectrical signatures of potential prey or predators. Sharks and rays have specialized organs called ampulla of Lorenzini that can detect electrical fields as weak as 5 billionths of a volt per centimeter. These animal hearing superpowers continue to inspire human technology development, from sonar systems to hearing aids, demonstrating the incredible ingenuity of evolutionary adaptation. Popular culture and well-meaning advice have created numerous myths about hearing that persist, despite scientific evidence to the contrary. Understanding the truth behind these misconceptions helps us make better decisions about our auditory health and appreciate the real complexity of our hearing system. One persistent myth claims that loud music or noise exposure only causes hearing loss if your ears hurt. This dangerous misconception leads many people to expose themselves to harmful sound levels. In reality, damage often occurs without pain, and by the time you feel discomfort, significant harm may have already occurred. The hair cells in your inner ear can be damaged by sound levels that feel perfectly comfortable. Another common belief suggests that hearing loss only affects older people. While age-related hearing loss is common, noise-induced hearing loss can occur at any age. Young people who frequently attend concerts, use personal listening devices at high volumes, or work in noisy environments are increasingly experiencing hearing loss, traditionally associated with much older adults. Many people believe that earwax should be removed regularly with cotton swabs or other implements. This practice can actually push wax deeper into the ear canal, potentially causing impaction or damage to the eardrum. Ears are generally self-cleaning, and excessive wax removal can disrupt this natural process. Professional cleaning is safer when wax buildup becomes problematic. The myth that hearing aids make you look old or weak prevents many people from seeking help they need. Modern hearing aids are often virtually invisible and can significantly improve quality of life. Untreated hearing loss actually ages people more than hearing aids, as social isolation and communication difficulties can accelerate cognitive decline. Some believe that if you can still hear some sounds, your hearing is fine. Hearing loss often affects specific frequencies first, typically high frequencies responsible for speech clarity. You might hear that someone is talking but struggle to understand what they're saying, especially in noisy environments. This partial hearing loss deserves attention and possible treatment. A dangerous myth suggests that brief exposure to extremely loud sounds won't cause permanent damage. Even short exposure to sounds over 140 decibels like gunshots or fireworks can cause immediate, permanent hearing loss. The damage isn't always proportional to exposure time. Sometimes it's instantaneous. Many people think that once hearing is lost, nothing can be done about it. While damaged hair cells don't regenerate naturally in humans, hearing aids, cochlear implants, and other assistive technologies can dramatically improve hearing function. Early intervention often leads to better outcomes. The belief that hearing loss is purely a mechanical problem ignores the complex neural processing involved in hearing. Much of what we call hearing actually happens in the brain, where sound signals are interpreted and given meaning. Understanding these myths helps us separate fact from fiction and make informed decisions about protecting and caring for our precious sense of hearing. The story of how hearing evolved is a fascinating tale spanning hundreds of millions of years, revealing the incredible journey from simple vibration detection to the sophisticated auditory systems we see in modern animals. This evolutionary adventure shows us how natural selection has shaped one of our most precious senses. The earliest forms of hearing likely evolved from the need to detect predators and prey. Simple organisms developed the ability to sense vibrations in water or ground, providing crucial survival information about their environment. These primitive vibration sensors were the humble beginnings of our complex auditory systems. Fish were among the first vertebrates to develop sophisticated hearing organs. Their lateral line system detects water movement and pressure changes, essentially allowing them to hear through their skin. This system can detect the movement of other fish, obstacles, or predators even in murky water where vision fails. The transition from water to land presented new challenges for hearing evolution. Sound travels differently in air than in water, requiring new adaptations. Early amphibians developed middle ear structures to efficiently transfer airborne sound waves to the fluid-filled inner ear. This innovation was crucial for terrestrial life. Mammals evolved the most complex hearing systems, with 3 tiny bones in the middle ear that amplify sound vibrations. Interestingly, these bones evolved from jaw bones in our reptilian ancestors. The malleus and incus developed from bones that originally helped our ancient predecessors chew their food. This evolutionary recycling demonstrates nature's ingenious efficiency. The mammalian cochlea represents a pinnacle of evolutionary engineering. Its spiral shape allows it to pack a long tube into a small space, with different sections tuned to different frequencies. This frequency separation enables the remarkable precision of mammalian hearing. Different evolutionary pressures have shaped hearing in various directions. Nocturnal animals often evolved enhanced hearing to compensate for limited vision. Predators developed acute directional hearing to locate prey, while prey animals evolved the ability to detect predator sounds and communicate danger to their groups. The evolution of echolocation in bats and dolphins represents convergent evolution to completely different animal groups, independently developing similar solutions to navigational challenges. This shows how evolutionary pressure can lead to remarkably similar innovations. Human hearing evolution included adaptations for speech communication. Our ability to distinguish subtle differences in vocal sounds enabled the development of complex language, which in turn drove further evolution of both hearing and speech production capabilities. Modern humans have created artificial evolutionary pressure through environmental noise. Our auditory systems, evolved for natural soundscapes, now must cope with traffic, machinery, and electronic sounds that didn't exist in our evolutionary history. The future of hearing evolution is uncertain but fascinating to contemplate. Will humans adapt to increasingly noisy environments, or will technology replace biological evolution in addressing hearing challenges? As we reach the end of our exploration through the remarkable world of hearing science, it's time to reflect on the incredible journey we've taken together and consider how this knowledge applies to your own relationship with sound and hearing. Throughout this book, we've discovered that hearing is far more than simply detecting sounds. It's a complex, sophisticated system that connects us to our environment, enables communication, alerts us to danger, and enriches our lives with music, laughter, and the voices of loved ones. Your auditory system is working right now as you read these words, monitoring your surroundings, and ready to alert you to anything important. We've learned that sound begins as vibrations in the air, transformed by your remarkable ears into electrical signals that your brain interprets as meaningful information. From the elegant mechanics of your outer ear collecting sound waves to the microscopic hair cells dancing in your cochlea, every component plays a vital role in your ability to hear. The journey through auditory processing revealed how your brain performs incredible feats of analysis, separating important sounds from background noise, determining the location of sound sources, and extracting meaning from complex acoustic patterns. Your auditory system adapts continuously, learning to focus on what matters most while filtering out distractions. Perhaps most importantly, we've explored how to protect this precious sense. The knowledge that much hearing loss is preventable empowers you to make informed decisions about sound exposure. Simple habits like using ear protection in loud environments, following the 60-60th rule for personal listening devices, and seeking prompt medical attention for ear problems can preserve your hearing for decades to come. We've also discovered that when hearing problems do occur, remarkable solutions exist. From sophisticated hearing aids to groundbreaking cochlear implants, technology continues to restore the gift of hearing to millions of people. The future holds even more promise, with research into hair cell regeneration, gene therapy, and advanced brain-computer interfaces. The social aspects of hearing remind us that this sense connects us to our communities and cultures, whether through spoken language, music, or the environmental sounds that create the soundtrack of our lives. Hearing shapes how we experience and interact with the world around us. As you continue your personal hearing journey, remember that every sound you hear is the result of an intricate biological process that took millions of years to evolve. Your ability to distinguish a whisper from a shout, to locate a ringing phone, or to enjoy your favorite song represents one of nature's most remarkable achievements. Take care of your hearing, be amazed by its capabilities, and never take for granted the incredible gift of sound that enriches every moment of your life. As our journey through the fascinating world of hearing science draws to a close, let's explore one final mystery. What happens to your hearing when you drift off to sleep? Even as your conscious mind rests, your auditory system continues its vigilant watch, demonstrating the fundamental importance of hearing for survival and well-being. When you fall asleep, your hearing doesn't simply shut off like a light switch. Instead, it shifts into a different mode of operation, maintaining enough awareness to alert you to important sounds while filtering out routine noises that might unnecessarily disturb your rest. This remarkable ability allows you to sleep through steady background sounds like air conditioning or traffic, while still awakening to your alarm clock or a crying baby. During the lighter stages of sleep, your auditory system remains quite responsive. Your brain continues to process sounds and can quickly return to full wakefulness when necessary. This explains why new parents often develop the uncanny ability to hear their infant's slightest whimper while sleeping soundly through other household noises. As you enter deeper sleep stages, your auditory processing becomes more selective. The brain's gating mechanisms work harder to prevent sounds from disturbing your rest, but they never completely close the door. Sudden, loud, or personally significant sounds can still break through and wake you up. Your name being called, for instance, has a better chance of waking you than an equally loud but meaningless sound. REM sleep, when most vivid dreaming occurs, presents fascinating questions about auditory processing. Some people report hearing sounds in their dreams, and researchers have found that external sounds can sometimes influence dream content. A ringing telephone might become incorporated into your dream as a church bell or alarm. The relationship between hearing and sleep quality is profound. Chronic exposure to nighttime noise can fragment sleep, leading to daytime fatigue, reduced cognitive performance, and various health problems. Your auditory system's inability to truly turn off means that even sounds you don't consciously notice can affect sleep quality. Creating an optimal acoustic environment for sleep involves understanding how your hearing works during rest. Consistent, gentle background sounds like white noise can mask disruptive, intermittent noises. The goal isn't silence, which can actually make you more sensitive to sudden sounds, but rather acoustic consistency that allows your brain to maintain its protective filtering. As you prepare for sleep tonight, appreciate the remarkable vigilance of your auditory system. While you rest and dream, your ears and brain continue their faithful watch, ready to alert you to anything truly important while allowing you the restorative sleep you need. Sleep well, knowing that your incredible sense of hearing will guard you through the night, connecting you to the world even in your dreams. The symphony of your auditory system plays on, a gentle reminder of the beautiful complexity of human perception and the endless wonders of science that surround us every moment of our lives. Sweet dreams, and may the sounds of tomorrow bring you joy, connection, and continued amazement at the remarkable gift of hearing.